Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Tung. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today is the unofficial restart of our group learning program. The group learning program is a 7-month program where I guide students in understanding the path to enlightenment. And next Sunday is the official restart on June 1st. But today is kind of like an unofficial restart where we're going to be doing meditation together and guiding you guys in a meditation session. Then we're going to use the session to provide students the opportunity to get to know the teacher, where you guys can just ask me any and all questions that you like about my past and present or future, basically learning from all my mistakes and all my difficulties and all the misery that I've had at different times in my life, getting to where I am today. You guys can maybe benefit from that. So I'm going to end up turning things over to you guys to be able to ask any and all questions that you would like about my life in the past, present, or future. It's really up to you guys. But we're going to start with meditation, and then afterwards we'll move into that. So welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we do this is we start with some chanting to ease into the meditation. This will actually help you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you would like to chant along, the chants are over there on a laminated sheet on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a laminated sheet. For those of you guys online, you can actually see what we're chanting and even chant along if you'd like by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. That's our website. And then from there, you just click on free books. And then down towards the bottom, you're going to see the daily chanting sheet. And this is a chant that we use in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. There is a part of this group learning program where I teach students how to chant. But for today, we're just going to actually do the chanting and meditation together. It's important to understand that during the lifetime of the Buddha, the way that they used chanting is they used it as a learning tool and as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that the Buddha taught was oral, so they needed something to be able to commit it to their memory, because the technology to write things down didn't exist 2,500 years ago. So they used chanting or reciting his teachings orally as a way to commit it to their memory. So you can see from the origins of this that the chants don't have any kind of mystical or magical effect. That's not what chanting's about. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. No matter what you've been exposed to in the past, the Buddha didn't teach any of those things. He didn't do rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and prayer and any of those kinds of things. So if you decide to chant along or you hear me chanting, you can know that this isn't what we're actually doing. We're not doing any kind of prayer or worship or anything like that. It's just to help ease our mind into meditation, because nowadays we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings. We have books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and all these different ways to actually learn the teachings that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. So that's why they would chant during his lifetime. And if you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of respect and appreciation and gratitude for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me. This would be ego. This would be arrogance and putting yourself above other people. Where an individual who's gotten to enlightenment and trained their mind, they're just going to think of themselves as being equal with everybody else. They're not going to think of themselves as being above other people. So I suspect that these came from his students, because what the Buddha did is he figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state and how to train his mind to get to that point. And when you get to enlightenment, your mind's going to be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state that you're experiencing. You will no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated from the mind. And if you learn from a teacher how to do that, and this teacher didn't want anything from you, they didn't expect anything from you, they just helped you out of the kindness of their heart, you might actually have a lot of gratitude, appreciation, or respect for that person too. So that's where I think that these chants actually came from, is his students, either during his life or after his death. So you're more than welcome to chant along as I'm chanting. And then after the chanting, there's going to be a period of time where I'm just guiding you in the meditation. I'm kind of giving you instructions while we're actually meditating together and helping you to actually learn meditation while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple, everyone online, we'll just all be meditating at the same time. I'm sure you'll hear an occasional sound in the environment because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. there's going to be sounds. There's going to be a car that goes by, maybe a bird chirping, a dog barking, maybe someone sneezes or coughs or something like this. And as long as your mind doesn't crave permanent quietness, you'll be able to be at peace and joy. But if you have a craving for permanent quietness, when you hear that sound, you'll be frustrated or annoyed. So just help yourself to understand that this environment is impermanent, and you'll hear occasional sounds. Just like every other place in the world, you're going to experience impermanence. And as long as you're not craving permanence, you can rest at ease and be peaceful. After the meditation, then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. The same chants that we went into the meditation with, we'll come out of the meditation with that as well. And then that's where we'll start today's class. In terms of your body position for meditation, the Buddha taught 4 positions. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking, because you're going to need these different positions at different times. It's kind of like a tool belt that you're assembling on your journey to enlightenment, and you would need these at different times to employ them at different times. So there isn't just one fixed way to actually meditate in terms of your body positioning, because all of our bodies are different. We're going to find different things to be comfortable. So a lot of times students are learning in the seated position. So I'm going to provide you some guidance on the seated position, but just understand what I share with you. It isn't like you have to meditate in this way, because there's more than one way to sit in meditation. So what I'm going to provide you is just some recommendations and things to consider, but ultimately you need to find what's comfortable for you, whether it matches with what I'm sharing or whether it's something completely different. Just find whatever's comfortable for you. But just a few suggestions for you to consider is that if you're in the seated position, which is very common for people to learn in the seated position, you might be on the floor, you might be in a chair. If you're at home, you might be on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. But for those of you guys that are on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is pretty common to kind of soften your seat. And then oftentimes people like to cross their legs. And if you do decide to cross your legs, you would like to just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and allows the circulation to flow. So that's an option for you as well. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if this is comfortable, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. For anybody who's in a chair or on a sofa, a bench, a wheelchair, anything like that, sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. But you can see me, I'm in a chair with my legs crossed. So this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms just wherever you're comfortable. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So by having the upper body erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train your mind. Because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're either eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from your mind, or you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in your mind. So you'd like your mind to be attentive and alert during this training. So having your sternum up and your shoulders back will help you to be able to accomplish that. It also makes it easy for you to breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโอตังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well who's joining us. This is the unofficial restart of our group learning program. This is a 7-month program that we have where you're gradually learning the teachings of the Buddha that will guide you to enlightenment. As I was mentioning at the beginning, what enlightenment is where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It no longer experiences any discontent feelings. So all that anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other discontent feelings that I mentioned are eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. You'll notice that the mind is focused. It has concentration and clarity and deep memory, because what you've done is you've purified the mind of certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered, and now the mind performs optimally. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming by the time you get to enlightenment. They're at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. So you'll notice that you can conduct relationships with ease. You don't have the struggles and difficulties or stress or anxiety that you might be currently experiencing in some of your relationships. That kind of stuff isn't actually coming from these other people. Sometimes that's what the mind thinks, is that these other people are causing these things to occur. It's actually coming from within your own mind. And this is why you can actually transform that. And I'm going to be helping you guys to understand how to do that so you can get to a point where you have all harmonious relationships. And that's going to take us the entire time, 7 months for me to be able to gradually help students to understand this. And then, you might even decide to learn beyond that 7-month period as well. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even be experiencing a bad mood any longer. It's physically impossible for an enlightened being to experience a bad mood because the causes and conditions that are producing that have been uprooted from the mind. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next 7 months. And today is our unofficial restart, where the June 1st date is the official restart of the program. And I'm going to be introducing students students to the program. And typically what I do in these classes is I will start with meditation, and then I'll share a talk with you on this book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website at no cost. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you can get this book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is going to be our foundational text for this particular program. And I'm going to gradually walk you through this chapter by chapter over the 7-month period. But today what we're going to do is not that. What we're going to do is we're just going to have a session where it's called Getting to Know the Teacher, where some of you guys that are online, some of you guys that are here, maybe you're intending to take this program all the way through. Maybe some of you guys are just tourists and you just popped in for some meditation and to see what's going on here. No matter what that is, you're welcome to participate in our event today, where what I've done is the students here, Samantha and Pat, have offered to be able to kind of be like our host for today, right? They're going to kind of host our event where they're going to kind of interview me for understanding, kind of my life and what I've done in the past, what I'm doing now, maybe what I'm going to do in the future. I don't know what questions might come up, but they're going to kind of structure our event where they're going to be asking different questions, kind of like the interviewers. And then those of you guys that are here and those of you guys that are online, you guys can participate too, and you can ask any questions that you like. Essentially, what a teacher does is a teacher makes themselves available to their students to be able to learn from the certain challenges that they might have experienced, so that those same challenges that you're experiencing perhaps in life, you can learn how to overcome those and to be able to get closer and closer to this mental state where you can experience complete peace and complete joy. So if there's anything that you guys would like to ask me as we go through our time together today, you're more than welcome to ask any and all questions. I'm completely an open book. I can share anything and everything with you about my life that I've done in the past or currently doing, or anything that I'm planning to do in the future. If you would like to ask questions here at the temple, we have microphones that are in the white bowl there. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you just hold that up to your chin so that we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And then when you're not using it, if you could just turn it off, that way we won't get feedback through the speakers, that would be wonderful. And then for anybody who's online, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, you can ask any and all questions that you like as well. If you put those into the comment section, I'll be able to see that, and I can, let people know what your question is. But if you're in Zoom, you have the added feature that you can electronically raise your hand. If you can look at the Zoom features, they have an option where you can electronically raise your hand, and I'll be able to see that. And then all you need to do is unmute your microphone when you're called on. You can just unmute your microphone, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to provide this opportunity for you guys to get to know anything you would like to know about me, or any challenges that you're facing that you would like to understand how maybe I dealt with those same things, if I experienced those same kinds of things in life. So I'm just going to turn things over to all of you, including Pat and Samantha, and just let you guys ask whatever you would like to ask. So welcome again, and we'll just turn it over to you guys.
Everyone, to those here in the temple and online. And I'd just like to thank Teacher David for this opportunity to get to know him. I think it's helpful for people to know who they're learning from and their background. And we thought maybe the easiest structure for this would maybe be to do things chronologically. And we'll ask a few questions, and then that we think would be commonly needed by students, and then open up to questions to people online and here at the temple, if that's okay with Teacher David.
Yeah, you guys can do whatever you like, right. However you like to do it.
Well, it makes sense to start with your childhood.
You look prepared over there, Samantha.
Pardon me?
You got an iPad over there? Is that what you got?
I do.
Oh, wow, you're prepared. Were you a journalist at any time in your life?
So I guess the best thing to do is just to start at your beginning, which is if you could give us a little background on your family life and what your childhood was like.
Sure. So I grew up in starting off with a single mom. My father at the time had left my mom when I was pregnant, when my mom was pregnant with me. So when I was first born, my mom was single. And I had an older sister who was 2.5 years older than me. And we were considered to be quite poor, I guess. We lived in a mobile home environment where a trailer, temporary housing essentially in a neighborhood. And I grew up there, and then at some point around 4 years old or so, 5 years old, my mom met another man, and he became ultimately my stepfather by the time I was 8 years old. And they were really struggling in their life with the things that they were trying to accomplish in life. We didn't have much money. They didn't have much wisdom about how to raise children. So there was a lot of abuse in the home. I frequently experienced physical abuse and other types of abuse as well. We ultimately, kind of increased our lifestyle where we, moved from the mobile home park into a townhouse and into a house and things like this. But we always had a very turbulent home environment where there was a lot of hostility, aggression, bitterness, a lot of fights, fear, beating, things like this. And where I really got a lot of input in my life that was very helpful was from my grandparents. I used to spend a lot of time with my grandparents. During summer breaks, I would oftentimes go to their house and spend the entire summer there. It wasn't uncommon for me to be there for 2 or 3 months. And whenever they would want be interested in me going home, I would, kind of revolt and say, no, I don't want to go home, because I wasn't interested in being in the home environment. And I wasn't getting much guidance as a child. I was just kind of left to my own devices to do whatever I would like to do. And because of that, I really struggled because I didn't have much wisdom of how to interact in the world. And I oftentimes got into trouble. I was what would be considered a juvenile delinquent. I used to commit crimes as a young child. I would steal. I would break into houses. I would steal. I stole a car several times. I stole other things, stole things from stores and things like this because our family didn't have much money. So I didn't have much food. I didn't have much things to really support myself. So by the age of 12, I realized, this wasn't really working so well. But I was still, kind of making unwise decisions. But I got my first job when I was 12 years old, delivering newspaper. For those of you guys that know what a newspaper is, those are kind of still around. Because my sister used to get a lot of the things from my parents. They would give her lots of material objects, but for me, they didn't really give me anything. So at the age of 12, I decided to get a job and started to buy things for myself. And I started working from the age of 12 all the way through. Ultimately, I was doing so bad. I started using drugs and alcohol at the age of 15. I actually had my first significant girlfriend actually died when I was 16 years old. She was pregnant with a baby that was probably somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks along. And she ended up dying, not from the pregnancy, but from E. coli bacteria that she had eaten at a place that we went to, and it basically ate her inside of her body, and she ended up dying. And this put me into a very deep sadness where I was very sad and very much struggling in the world for several years from this experience. And I was committing even more crimes at the age of 16. I ended up dropping out of school. The last grade that I completed was 8th grade. I never completed 9th grade. But ultimately, I went away to this group home, which was for boys. I was sent there by the court system, and I spent 10 months there. And this was kind of like a place to learn and grow and become a better person. And I ultimately ended up getting my GED while I was there. And I left there when I was 17 years old and enrolled in college. And I got my bachelor's degree as information systems management, where I graduated with a 4-year degree. But it was very challenging for me in school and in college because I never completed 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So I really had to work hard. But by that time, I had given up on drugs and alcohol. So I was still dabbling with it a little bit while I was in college, but I really focused on schoolwork a lot because it was so challenging for me. I really had to. So I really worked hard for the A's and B's that I got, and tried to be the very best student that I could be, and trying to become a better person. But it was always a real struggle. And then, that kind of takes me up to, I guess, about mid early 20s. I don't know how far you were interested in going, but that's kind of like my childhood, and very turbulent, very difficult. If it wasn't for my grandparents, I probably would be dead, because they really helped me to learn certain things that I needed to understand in life. Mm-hmm.
Role models. Were your grandparents, you consider them your role models as a child growing up?
Yeah, my grandparents were really what helped me in life. My grandfather was in the Marine Corps. He fought in World War II, and he was a very tough individual, but he had a humorous side and a warm side to him. Him and I used to do a lot of outdoor activities. We used to go out on the boat, go fishing. We used to go camping. I was involved in Boy Scouts growing up. My grandmother, taught me a lot about how to be kind and warm and gentle and generous. I also spent a lot of time with them because they did volunteer activities. They would go to military veteran hospitals and nursing homes, and they would donate their time, spending time with the military veterans. And I grew up in America, by the way, the USA, and I would go to these charitable events with them and donate my time. I would push carts around and give out cookies, and we would do other things, with the military veterans, because a lot of times they were put into these homes and people just forgot about them. So we would go there and help the military veterans who were aging to, have a little bit of brightness in their day. They were very involved in what's called the VFW. I think you probably know what that is, Pat. It's a Veterans of Foreign Wars organization where veterans of U.S. Foreign wars, they have these organizations that come together and they do certain events together, and I would participate in those. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up participating in all the different charitable events that they did, because they were retired. So they basically spent their time just donating their time to helping other people. So they were pretty much my role models growing up. I had a few teachers that I looked up to, but for the large part, I just kind of saw school as like a waste of time until I got to college. Now, college was really interesting and something that I really benefited from a lot. But all my grade school years, I looked at it as a waste of time because I used to just get like busy work. It wasn't really challenging for me. I was kind of like goofing around in school and causing all kinds of problems and stuff like this. But there were a few teachers who really had an impact on me at different times. Like, for example, my 5th grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Snitchler. And she had this one project where you guys might have did this in school too, where you plant a plant and half of the class talks nice and friendly and kind to the plant, and the other half talks really hostile and aggressive and bitter to the plant. And then you kind of look and see what the results were. And she put me in the group where you talk hostile and bitter and harsh to the plant, because that's what I was doing at that age, because that's what I learned growing up. So that's what I tended to do. And I could see that the plant didn't grow nicely at all, but the group where that talked nice and friendly, their plants grew like so nice. And Mrs. Snitchler really kind of like took an interest in helping me to see that what I was choosing to do as a young kid was unwise. And she never judged me. She never yelled at me. She never talked bad to me. She just always was encouraging and supportive and trying to help me see that there's a better way of life. And I just didn't understand what that better way of life was. So there were some teachers along the way that influenced me in a positive direction. And then at that boys' home that I went to as well, there were some people there as well. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you had a very difficult childhood. And I'm wondering if you had any type of spiritual practice that you were involved in that helped you with that or didn't help you with that, and what your journey was with spiritualism.
Yeah, definitely had a very difficult childhood. That's a nice way to say it, right? Growing up, my family had baptized my sister as a Lutheran. This is a certain denomination of Christianity. But with me, they just let me do whatever I would like to do. They never baptized me when I was growing up. They were just like, you're on your own. And it was pretty much like that with everything in my life. So I kind of dabbled with a lot of things. I went in and out of every kind of church that you could imagine, Mormon, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, you name it, Catholic, anything and everything. I had friends ultimately by the time I was early adulthood who were Jewish, and I experienced some things in the Jewish tradition and Judaism. I had some friends that were studying Islam and Muslim teachings, and I kind of looked at that for a little bit. Never understood anything about Buddhism or even understood that there was something called Buddhism until I was like probably in my late 20s. I didn't even know when I was first coming to Thailand the first time. That was like the first time I'd ever heard of anything called Buddhism. But yeah, I was like in and out of every kind of church that you could imagine and kind of looking around and trying to see what was happening. But I never understood the practice. Right? I never understood there was a practice. I just heard a bunch of beliefs. There was literally some churches that we would go to and they would sit us down in a pew and they would say, these are everything we believe in. And if you believe in these things too, you can join us. But if you don't believe in these things, you can't be a member of our congregation. And, we would look at all those things. I would look at all those things as a young kid, and I was just like, I don't even know what some of these things are. So I just understood that there was a lot of belief, and I didn't understand, the practice part. So the Buddhist teachings really brings through this practice of how to train your mind. And there's no beliefs in his teachings whatsoever, which I really enjoyed. And it's not about like instant change. Oftentimes, when they would give us this list of this is everything we believe in and this is everything that you need to do today in order to be part of our congregation. And that's not the way that a human being functions. And that's just not the way that you work. It's through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you'll experience improvement in your life and in training your mind. So that's one of the things that the Buddhist teachings make very clear, where I didn't experience that in some of these other places that I went into.
So I think from what you're saying with your childhood is that, as with many people who are younger and in their teens and whatnot, we don't like to be told what to do. So structured religion was probably going to be a difficult thing for you to follow. But you've alluded to in some of your teachings and classes that we've had that you felt differently as a child sometimes about the way you saw things that might ultimately have pointed you to the path of Buddhism. Can you give some examples of how you looked at the world perhaps differently than someone else your age might have?
Yeah, so when I was frequently being beaten and abused, I would be sitting in my room all by myself. I can remember at the early age of eight years old, crying and being upset and confused of why I had so much love in my mind and in my heart for the people around me, but yet they didn't have that for me. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how people could hit and beat and, treat someone like that when there was so much love that I had in my mind and in my heart that I was interested in sharing with others, but that wasn't what was being shared with me. So at the age of 8, I remember being very interested in a more peaceful and joyous life, but I didn't understand how to do that at the age of 8. I remember talking to my sister because she would sometimes get beat too, not as much as me, but she would get beat. And I remember I was sitting in my door jamb of my bedroom and she was sitting in the door jamb of hers, and our bedrooms were right next to each other. And I shared with her, I said, if I ever have a child, I will never hit them the way that our parents are hitting us. And I do have a son. He's 12 years old. I've never raised my hand at him even once. I've never felt an urge to even hit him for any reason whatsoever. Hitting a child doesn't do anything but create division and separation between the parents and the child. And if you have children or you're thinking about having children, it's so important to never hit them, because this doesn't do anything to help the child learn. Because the whole reason why our parents were getting angry is because because they had certain expectations of us, wanting us to be a certain way, and we didn't meet those expectations. They got angry. They caused their own anger, and they thought the way to fix that was to force us and fear us into doing things their way. Where what you really need to do is sit down and talk with your child, educate them, give them wisdom, help them to understand better decision making. And hitting a child doesn't do that. And I understood that at the age of 8. I didn't understand that I needed more wisdom. I didn't understand that, but I understood that hitting was unwise. And I knew that I would never hit any child that I would ever potentially have. So there were all kinds of things like this going on in the home, and it just really like shook me, and like I would be oftentimes very confused. Like one time we went to McDonald's, which is like a fast food restaurant, and we got our tray of food that my mom had ordered, and the French fries were missing. There was no French fries, and my mom sat there and yelled and hollered and screamed at the cashier and trying to get her French fries. And I just looked at her like, it just seemed very odd to me. Like, why would you yell and holler and scream at somebody to get what you want when you could have just asked and just said, excuse me, ma'am, it looks like there's no French fries here. I remember ordering French fries. Did I not pay for French fries? Like what happened here? Like I didn't know that what my mom should have done, but I just struck me as very odd that somebody would yell and holler and scream at another person. So, your parents teach you either exactly what you should be doing in life and giving you wisdom and imparting knowledge that are going to help you to improve your life, or your parents are going to show you all the things that are unwise, right? And I learned a lot of the unwise things from my mother and my stepfather. Now, by the time they died, we had a great, wonderful relationship, but there was a lot of bitterness and harshness and hostility growing up from all the things that I experienced. But I was getting all the wise ways to do things from my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather. So yeah, when I was younger, I had all kinds of issues, and I would act out because I didn't know. All I knew as a child was to conform to what was going on around me. So I was a bully growing up. In my early years, up to about 6th or 7th grade, I would bully other children. And then I started getting bullied as well as I aged, and I started entering into like 7th, 8th, 9th grade. People were bullying me, and I stopped doing those kinds of things. But I had a very turbulent younger years, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody whatsoever. But I definitely learned during that time, but it was a very harsh way of learning.
Before we go any further, does anybody have any questions about David's childhood?
We have some questions here on Zoom. Pat, I can read these for you guys. Let me open this up here. The question here from Melody, could I ask what brought you to the path to enlightenment? Does this fit in now, or is there another time that this would fit in? A little bit later? Okay. Melody, they're going to put that in later. Tom is saying, I understand the question. This may divert from the scope of the session, so I'd appreciate if you could share maybe a couple of sentences. You mentioned about talking to the plants. So I remember energy healing. Could you comment on the practices, external, Qigong, Reiki, and pranic healing, anything with those practices that could relate to Buddhism? The Buddha never taught any of those things. If those things are helpful, people would have to look to individuals who understand those things to be able to understand them. Melody also asked, I'm also interested by the topic of talking to a plant. I recalled you mentioned plants are not living beings because they don't have senses. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I wonder how you interpret this experiment of talking to a plant. So I'm not a scientist. I don't understand the mechanisms behind why that occurs. But I know that plants are not living beings because they don't have all 5 aggregates the way that the Buddha teaches. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't care for plants. We shouldn't take care of them because obviously they provide us resources and helpful things on the planet. It's just that they don't have all 5 things. In order to be considered a living being, the Buddha teaches that there's 5 aggregates or 5 collections or 5 criteria. This is that a living being is going to have physical form, which you know that you have physical form, that a living being is going to have feelings, a living being is going to have perceptions, which are views and opinions about the world. They're going to have volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, like free will. And then a living being is going to have a consciousness or a mind, right? And a plant has physical form, but it doesn't have those other 4 things. So I don't know the mechanisms in the biology about why a plant doesn't grow well when you talk harsh to it, but I'm sure a scientist would be able to help us to understand that if we were interested in that kind of information. So that's what's here so far.
So after you received your college degree, your 4-year degree, what was your career path, and what led to Buddhism?
Yeah, so early on, I was doing jobs as a teenager. We could get jobs in like fast food restaurants. So I was like a cook, a cashier, a dishwasher. I used to cut grass. I used to do any number of things. I worked at so many different places. By the time I went to college, I was working in the catering department at the college, helping at the college. But ultimately, because my degree was in information systems management, which is business and computers, I decided to start moving in that direction. So I got a job at the computer lab at the college. And then I got a job off campus at a manufacturing plant, managing their computer systems. And then during the summers, I worked for the government in Washington, D.C., because I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. So I had like 3 summers of college internships with the government. And I was working in the computer field there too. And by the time I graduated, I got a really good job at a software company, making a decent salary. And we were traveling all over the country, the USA, doing computer consulting. And this was in the late 1990s when the year 2000 was coming, and everybody was really worried about the year 2000, and they thought it was going to crash all the computer systems. So there was a lot of money being put into computers. So as a 23-year-old individual, I was probably living the life of like someone making, $300,000 or $400,000. We had a credit card that had no limit to it, and we could just spend the money. We had corporate apartments in all these different cities, and we could rent cars and eat food and travel around. We were traveling around. They were just throwing money at us, trying to get us to do this work. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I was fresh out of college, and they were billing us out at $350 an hour. And I found that out one time, and I was like, I am not worth $350 an hour. I don't care, what I'm doing in these companies. I'm not worth that amount of money, but that's what they were able to pay for. So I ended up working for these different computer companies, and we did some government work with the Department of Defense and intelligence agencies. And I was in and out of probably 25 different companies because I was doing consulting. So I got to see a lot about business and how businesses worked. And what really intrigued me was how you could use technology to make a business more successful. And I was able to see that connection, so that ultimately I ended up opening my own business. By the time I was 27, I started opening up a business because by that time I had come to Thailand, and I had experienced Thailand, and I brought Thai massage back to the USA. And I started to open Thai massage centers. And I used technology during that time frame, like this was like in the early 2000s, 2003. This was like websites were just starting to start to happen. So we created a website, and we had an email list, which were like people hadn't been doing that kind of stuff. And we had online scheduling where you could schedule your appointment online for a massage. So I started bringing all this technology into the massage field, and people were really amazed about how I was able to do that and create more success that way. So I became very successful financially with the massage field. And I ended up publishing a book, 2 books about Thai massage and traditional Thai healing arts that are available for people to be able to learn. And I was very successful in business, both in the information systems career. I thought my career path was like manager, director, VP, that kind of thing. And I was headed in that direction. I made my way up to the first level of management management. And, my immediate bosses were directors and vice presidents of companies. And it was interesting. I learned a lot, but mostly what the businesses were trying to get me to do as a manager was to pressure the employees to kind of produce more. And I wasn't interested in that. My interest was to help the employees to learn and grow and develop, and develop their career. So I never had any issues with people being interested to work for me. When I was a manager, when I was a business owner, I always had plenty of people who were interested in working with me as their boss, because I was always interested in seeing people grow and develop and become more successful in their careers. It wasn't about me and what I wanted from them, because I didn't want anything from them. The only thing I was interested in is seeing them be successful. So people were really interested in working for me because they knew if they worked with David, David would invest a lot in their growth and development as an individual. And so in my early years of my career, it was all about me gaining skills and gaining experience and helping other people to gain skills and gain experience.
Sounds like your career path was similar to a lot of people, in that when you first started out, it was very goal oriented and, as you said, kind of pushing people towards goals and success and whatnot. And yet you were a little bit different in your approach, in that you appeared to be more, or were more involved and engaged with helping people. Do you think if you had found or knew about the path of Buddhism and right speech and right livelihood and whatnot, that you would have had as successful a career in trying to follow the path? Because a lot of things that we learn during this path to enlightenment seems to be in conflict of what you have to do in order to be traditionally successful in a career in business.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I took a career planning class my first semester. And part of this career planning class, you kind of look inward and kind of figure out what are your skills, what are your interests, and what is it that you would like to do in the world. And what I walked away with from that class is I was interested in being a police officer or a social worker, because what I had discovered in that class is I really enjoy helping people. And that's what I was interested in doing. But then when I looked at that and I realized how much money they made, because at the time, police officers didn't really make much money at all, and neither did social workers. I was interested in making a lot of money because I was poor when I was a child, and I was like, I want money, right? So that's when I started getting into computers, and I was like, I think I can make a lot of money with this. So it kind of took me in the direction of computers, which ultimately, of course, we use computers and technology, but that isn't what I was ultimately interested in. But even though I was going through the career path and doing those kind of career things and opening my own business, I did understand a bit of the teachings, even though I didn't know that they were Buddhist teachings at the time. So like my grandmother would teach me things like, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Right? You could say this is kind of like part of right speech, even though the Buddha doesn't teach it that way, but that's essentially what she was teaching me. She would teach me not to lie, not to steal, these kinds of things, because they're natural laws. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is like how to make wise decisions about your life and how you interact in the world. So while I didn't know anything about Buddhism necessarily, I was dabbling in these natural laws, even in the computer field, even in my own business. And as I was doing those things and making those decisions, I was seeing success, because what I know about the teachings of the Buddha now, looking back at how I ran my company, I was running it based on the teachings of the Buddha without even necessarily realizing it at the time. And we experienced a phenomenal amount of success because of that, because we were making decisions wisely. So while a lot of people think about the teachings of the Buddha and they think it's opposite of how to operate a business, that's just the way that they're thinking about kind of general society. Maybe people are cutthroat, or maybe they're boastful about their credentials or something like this. there's another way. You don't have to be boastful. You don't have to be cutthroat in your career and in your development. And you'll actually be much more successful. You don't have to lie in business. In fact, all these things are going to not just produce unwholesome results for you. But when we're chasing money, or we're chasing that big title, we might think that we want to take this shortcut, and we might just try to race to the ultimate goal, which is maybe your more money or a higher title or something like that. But there's a better way to do this, and if you learn the teachings of the Buddha and you implement those as part of your business approach, you'll actually be wildly more successful than you ever were without having learned this knowledge.
What year did you come to Thailand for your first visit? And you said you came and then you brought back Thai massage. So how long did you actually spend in Thailand during that time?
Yeah, the first time I came to Thailand, it was 2002. I was 27 years old. I was coming here to get married to a Thai woman because we had already gotten married in the U.S. And I knew that her parents would be interested in seeing her get married. And I was also interested in having them to be able to get married in kind of a traditional Thai way. So without knowing anything really about Thailand, because that was before the internet was big, I couldn't research anything. I just kind of got on a plane and came here in 2002 with this woman who was my wife. And at the age of 27, I started to get exposure to Thailand and what Thailand was about. And I realized that Thailand was very different than everything that I'd grown up with. Because if you're familiar with growing up in the USA, even though you might not have grown up in the USA, typically what you're taught in the USA is we're the best country in the world. We're so much greater than everybody else. There's all this kind of pride and arrogance and stuff like this. And, we're taught, maybe you were taught this too, that the way to get to happiness is money and wealth, and having lots of relationships and things like this. So I was chasing money, and I had all this money and I had all this wealth, but I didn't have the happiness that I was told that would be at the end of this rainbow, so to speak. And I came here to Thailand and I saw that people were so happy and they were so friendly and they were so polite and so respectful, and they didn't really have much money. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? How does this work? Like, America isn't the greatest country in the world. We aren't the happiest. I am not happy. I have everything that I'm supposed to have. I am not happy, but these people have next to nothing and they're super happy. How did this happen? And I was very intrigued by this, and I was very interested to understand why this was occurring. So I started peering into it more and more. Thai massage was like the entrance point for me to understand all things Thai, because everything in Thailand leads back to Buddhism. If you look at like Thailand and you think about it like a tree, the Thai dancing, the Thai fabric, the Thai food, the Thai music, all of this stuff, this is like the leaves of the tree, right? But then the branches and the trunk of the tree is like Thai culture, right? But then this tree, the roots of it is Buddhism. So I saw the leaves on the tree. I saw the Thai massage, and I was like, that's really intriguing. I'm interested in Thai massage. So I started diving into that, and I started learning about the trunk of the tree, which was the Thai culture. And I was teaching that as part of my Thai massage classes. I was teaching Thai culture and Thai massage, and ultimately what it took me to is the roots of the tree, which was Buddhism. So I started teaching a little bit of Buddhism. Even though I didn't know much about it at the time, I was kind of dabbling in it. So I started to kind of teach it in 2005, because I had learned Thai massage in 2003. And then by 2005, people were asking me to start teaching. And I didn't think I was necessarily 100% prepared, but I knew more than other people, because I'd only been doing Thai massage for like 2 years up to that point. So I was like, okay, let me teach some classes. People are interested in me teaching. They're asking me to teach. They must have confidence that I can teach. So let me try it. And so I started teaching Thai massage, but I integrated into it not just the techniques of Thai massage, but I started teaching Thai culture and I started teaching Buddhism along with the Thai massage, because the way I looked at Thai massage is it's like a cultural fabric that you can't just rip one piece of the fabric out and just do that. You need to teach the entire fabric. And up to that point in 2002, when I came to Thailand, For 10 years prior to that, I had been spending time around Asian people because being in the U.S., it was a very diverse place. I grew up in a very hostile and bitter family life, and I started spending time around Asian people by the time I was 17. I started spending time with Filipinos, Indonesian people, Chinese people, Korean, Vietnamese, people from all over Asia. And I saw things in their homes that I didn't see in my home. Like when I would go visit my friends and I would spend the night or whatever it was, just maybe going there to eat dinner, I would see politeness and kindness and friendliness and respect. And I would see how the family would work together and help each other. And this really intrigued me about Asian people. So without making like a conscious choice, like I didn't make I didn't flip a switch in my mind, but around age 17, there was this shift where I started spending time around all Asian people. And I was just spending time, lots of time around Asian people. So by the time I was 27 and I actually came to Thailand for the first time, it was kind of like the next progression of having spent the last 10 years of spending time with Asian people. But now I was actually in Asia for the first time, and it was very different than what I had experienced in America. And I was so intrigued by what I was seeing here that I was interested to understand it more and more and more. So I went from the leaves of the tree deeper and deeper down into the roots, and that took me to Buddhism. And that's what ultimately I discovered. After multiple years, I realized that's why the Thai people are so happy. That's why they're so joyful. It's the Buddhism that they've been training their minds. But it took me many, many years to figure that out. I didn't know that in 2002 or 2005 or 2010 or even 2015, because that's when I moved here to Thailand, was in 2015. It wasn't until 2018 that I realized, oh my goodness, this Buddhism thing is what I've been looking for. Because in 2002, when I realized they were so peaceful and so joyful, it took me 17 years to figure out it was the Buddhism. And that's the very thing I was thinking about back when I was 8 years old, crying in my room, having been beaten, wanting to have peacefulness and joy in my life, but not knowing how to do that. It was the Buddhism that was going to be able to help me to be able to accomplish that. But I didn't understand that until about 2018, even though I'd been dabbling in this stuff for like 13 years.
So after your first trip to Thailand, when you returned to the States, did you then decide that you wanted to pivot away from IT, or did you do a little bit of the Thai teaching and massage as well as the IT, and then just slowly move away from that? And then when did you and why did you make the decision to move to Thailand with the Thai culture?
Sure. So when I was in Thailand in 2002, I experienced Thai massage, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like there's nothing like this back in the USA. So I started to learn Thai massage in 2003. And then by the September of 2003, I decided to start opening a massage center. But I knew I had to start small, and I didn't have much money. So I started it in my apartment, my condo, just in my living room. We converted it over to like a massage place. So people would come to our house and they would get a massage. And I would do this in the evenings after work, and I would do it on the weekends. So I would wake up at like 5 a.m. in the morning, go to work all day, come home at 6, 7, 8 p.m. And then I would have a massage or two in the evening that I would have scheduled. And then on the weekends, I would be massaging all weekend. So I'd be working like 16 hours a day, essentially, for about a year and a half straight. And after doing that for about a year and a half, and we ended up within 6 months, we moved into a doctor's office, and we shared space with the doctor's office. And then within 6 months of that, we ended up opening our own place. We rented our own facility, which we ultimately ended up buying. But we got our own facility with 5 massage rooms and a waiting room and stuff like this. And it just became more and more successful because people were experiencing this brand new thing that they had never experienced before. And I really enjoyed it because I felt like it was getting me closer to what I was interested in, which was helping people. Because even though in corporate life, I was able to help people by helping them get education and classes and things like that, it wasn't me actually doing the helping. I was just kind of facilitating it. I was allocating the budget for them to go get a massage. I was putting their projects on hold. I was staffing them on projects that would help them get skills, but I wasn't actually doing the helping of doing the training and stuff like that. So the massage was like a way for me to like get my hands on it and actually start helping people. And I really enjoyed the helping part. There was a lot of money involved in that as well. We became not very, but I was able to acquire a certain amount of wealth, which I don't have anymore, but I was able to acquire a certain amount of wealth during that period of time, because you make money, you spend money, but during that period of time I was making a substantial amount of money, but that was never the focus. Where when I was in computers, I wanted money, but when I was in business, it was about helping people. And because I was focused on helping people, I never had to worry about money. It was always there. So I gradually transitioned. After about a year and a half, I went into work one day. I was a manager. I had a team of 55 people, and my director was known to be kind of like bitter and hostile and kind of like a grumpy old man. Not all men are grumpy old men, right? There's idea that you can be old and not grumpy too, but this gentleman was a grumpy old man. And I had this thing where my team had done an amazing job. My 55-person team had actually come in on the weekend. They saved the company like millions of dollars. This computer system was going to crash. It was really the responsibility of another department to handle it. But my team decided to come in and actually fix this problem. And they saved the company like millions of dollars. And my director came to me and they said, your team has done an outstanding job. What can we do for you guys? And I said, well, I would like to reward the team by taking them out and doing like a half a day event where they can take off work and we can go do an event outside of work for a half a day. And he said, perfect. Tell me what you need for a budget and you've got the money and you can take your team off and you guys can go have fun for a half a day, whatever you'd like. It's up to you. And I was like, sweet. So I went to my team and we brainstormed it and I said, come up with an idea of what you guys would like to do. I've got the budget. We can go a half a day off a campus. Anything you guys would like to do, let's do it. So we brainstormed it. We spent all this time. The team came up with this idea of what they were going to do. It sounded like a great idea. So I went back to the director by email and I said, hey, they've got the idea. Here's what it is. We only need $400 or something like that. They had come up with a thing. And remember, we saved the company millions of dollars, right? Well, by this point, the director was in a grumpy mood. And he wrote out this email to me and all the other managers. The last thing we need to be doing is taking people out. The company's going through downsizing and, blah, 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 blah. He was very bitter and very harsh and hostile. And this was like on a Friday, right, that he did this. Well, all through the weekend, I was thinking about this. I was like, my goodness, this is what I have to deal with. Like after being at this company and like everybody did such an amazing job and we saved them millions of dollars, like we can't even get a $400 budget to take the team off campus to do this. I've got my own company. We've been in business for a year and a half. We're making a decent amount of money. I don't need to put up with this, right? So on Monday morning, I went into work and I gave my resignation. And I didn't tell them why. I just said, hey, I'm going to go do this thing with my own company. And I submitted my resignation and I said, hey, I'll give you 2 weeks notice. I'm going to go, work in my own company. Cause I was like, I don't need to deal with this stuff. So that's what I did. And so I went away. And by that point, our company was making about $8,000 to $9,000 a month, which wasn't very much because I was making that much in a salary, right? Like I was making about $100,000 at the time. So I set a floor for myself because I'd seen people in business that they like use credit cards and they exhaust their resources and they basically go bankrupt trying to start a business. So our business at that year and a half mark was making $8,000 to $9,000 a month, which was enough to sustain everything that we needed in my personal life. So I said, if my company ever makes less than that for 3 months in a row, I would go back to IT. And we never did. We never made less than that for 3 months in a row. We just kept building and building and building. Eventually, we were making about $80,000 a month is what we built up the company to make. So it was more than enough for me to make a living at. But I always had that threshold that I didn't want to kind of walk into this blindly. But at the time that I left the company and started this massage business, the people around me that were in IT, they were laughing and joking and mocking, and they thought I was the stupidest decision ever. Because when I first started it, I was working for a defense contractor, a military contractor, and these were a lot of ex-military people. So the idea of like going to start a massage business, they thought it was like really stupid, but it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. So the moral of that story is, don't always listen to the people around you. When you have an idea and you're interested in doing something, don't just listen to the people around you, because they're going to try to knock you down potentially, and they're going to try to pull you down. They're going to think that what you're doing is so stupid and so idiotic. But if you really believe in what you're doing and you know that it's a wise decision, just go forward with that decision. Because other people don't have the same insight as you. So if I would have listened to those people and not opened the massage business, I would have never experienced all the successes, both financially and personally, that I experienced. So I didn't listen to those people. I heard them. I heard what they said, but I didn't pay attention to it because I knew that this is something that I was really interested in doing, and I wasn't going to be dissuaded just because other people thought it wasn't a good idea. So people will oftentimes tell you that your ideas are not smart or wise or something like that, and just because they tell you that doesn't mean that you should listen to them. You might hear them, but it doesn't mean you have to follow through with what they're saying, because if you're trying to improve your life, the last thing these people that are in the darkness want to do is see you improve your life, typically, because by you improving your life, it's a reminder to them that they're still in the darkness. And the more you improve your life, the more wholesome that you become, the more they realize that they're in the darkness. So it didn't just happen in the business world and the professional world, but even in my family. When I started to grow and become a better and better person, they were trying to pull me down back into the darkness as well. So you might experience this depending on the types of people you have around you when you get onto the path to enlightenment, where people are trying to pull you back down into the darkness. And I just kept going forward and forward and forward. Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming, since I know Sarah, that there was a divorce in there somewhere.
Yeah.
When was this time period, and can you express why?
Yeah, so Pat asked, for those of you guys online, I don't know if they could hear, is that I got married in 2002 to a Thai woman, which we were together for about 5 or 6 years. And while I learned a tremendous amount in that relationship, I realized that I got married for all the wrong reasons. I realized this on our honeymoon. Literally, I woke up in the morning and I realized I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of the person or anything about her, because I learned a tremendous amount in the relationship. I would never change that for anything. She was a fine person, but I just felt like I had made an unwise decision. But I stuck it out for 5 or 6 years. I was trying to make the marriage work. I was making unwise decisions as part of the marriage. She was making some unwise decisions, but nonetheless, we ended up ending our relationship in 2007 is when I told her that, definitely we needed to end our marriage. In 2008 is we finalized the divorce. And then Sarah and I started dating around that time, my current wife. And then we dated for 3 years, living together and spending time together. And we didn't get married until 2010. And we got married in 2010. And then we lived together long term as a married couple, but we ended up having some challenges too. So in 2014, 2015, we separated, where, I kind of went off and stayed by myself in a house for a year. And I had a business here in Thailand. When I first came to Thailand in 2015, I started a business here, and then I worked in that business for about 2 or 3 years. I went off and did a bunch of things. We were separated. By this time, we had our 2.5-year-old son, Bailan. He was about 2.5 years old, and we separated. This was really important for us to train our mind to let go, because we were, attached to each other, and we were having difficulties in our relationship. We ended up deciding to sign the paper to legally divorce, because here in Thailand, the way you get married is you walk into the government office, in about 30 minutes of signing papers, you're now married. And then if you would like to get a divorce, you basically go and you sign another paper, and you're like, we're now divorced. That's it. It's no big deal to get married or divorced. About 80% of the couples in Thailand aren't legally married. Only about 20% are legally married, because there's actually no benefit in Thailand to actually legally marry. The only thing is that you can have the same last name. That's the only thing. So there's really no benefit to it. And whenever I got married the first time, I realized that I felt pressured, and there was a lot of expectations on me, and I became complacent in the marriage. And then I noticed that with Sarah too, my current wife, I noticed that when we got legally married, I felt pressured and controlled, not by her, but I just felt like there was this pressure from this government contract that we had signed. And I felt also complacent. There were certain things in the relationship that I used to do when we were just dating and we were living together as a couple that I wasn't doing anymore as a married individual. I felt very different. So I asked her she asked me if we could go sign the papers to divorce. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So we went and signed the papers, and it was like a big pressure released. And not everybody in the world necessarily needs to experience that. Some people can be married and be just fine. But for me, it actually released the pressure from me, because now we signed the paper to divorce, and we drove home together in the same car. We went back to our same house together. We slept in the same bed that night. Like, we were still together as a couple. We just signed the paper that we weren't legally married anymore. And wow, it felt so much better, because now I realized, like, hey, I need to step up my game here. This lady can leave at any time. Right. So that's where I started to do things differently. Sarah came into my life around 2007. And the things that really attracted me to my current wife is that there was a situation where she could have lied to me, and I probably would have never found out. And she, for all intensive purposes, this was, when we were just getting to know each other, by the way, but for all intensive purposes, most people probably would have looked at that situation and said, yeah, you should lie. It's going to potentially be in your best interest to lie about this situation. But she chose not to lie, and she told me the truth. And I was very surprised by that, because she had almost every incentive to lie, and she didn't lie to me. And she told me the truth. And that made me very attracted to her, because of the quality of her mind, that she was willing to tell the truth in a situation where most people probably would have lied. So that's kind of how I got together with Sarah. Yeah, we have another question here.
Yeah, hi. Interesting to the arc of your life that began with this turbulent childhood, and then somehow the guidance, which, as my life has gone on, I've realized just how powerful a determinant that is in the early years. And you did have your grandparents as some kind of guiding force. And how that, in many ways, gave you this entree into business, which, strangely enough, from a Buddhist perspective, in the modern world, smoothed your way just as much as Buddhism ultimately has, by the sounds of it. I look at my life, by comparison, there was the turbulent childhood without the guidance of parents, and yet there was every
Yeah, you need a different mic. There's some impermanence there.
Yeah. But the interesting thing was that, like, I was in a position at that age when you got into your business, and that became something that smoothed really your whole way. It's quite obvious. And I had everything at my feet at that time. But when I found Buddhism, its radicalness blew everything up. So now as I get older and I realize I don't have that basis, I don't have that security within the world for the ego in many ways that says, I know that I could go back and form a business tomorrow. That every advantage I have was blown up by the spiritual path, which, you know, the residual ego can regret. But perhaps the spiritual part of oneself can say, yes, well, you know, this is how Dharma works. Difficulty drives you forward, but in a very different way. So we have these different paths, but I'm interested. Do you acknowledge in some ways that you were lucky, in a sense, ultimately to have had that very modern... I mean, put it this way, in my 20s, when I gave up halfway through my law degree to do my 10 Vipassanas in my 20s, there was part of me that read the teachings and read the radicalness of them and saw people who kind of were trying to get it both ways and didn't think that they were doing it for real. Because the teachings were like, you know, embrace this as if you're drowning, a drowning man, or as if someone's about to chop your head off. You know, you could die tomorrow, all this stuff. As I got into various teachings from Theravadan to Tibetan and so forth. And now I see how that made things harder for me, actually, to embrace it hardcore from the beginning. And yet I hear how you had a difficult start, but actually having that more modern thing and embracing it gradually actually may have worked out very well for you. Would you say that's true?
Is what true that I did things gradually? You mean
that in the modern world there can be a danger of taking the teachings too literally, too quickly, and that you were in some ways lucky to not have done that, to have, as you've literally described, very gradually come into this understanding over the course of decades, while living a very modern life that gave you many comforts that didn't threaten your egoic structure like some people do when they meet it at a young age. They their whole life blows up.
Yeah. So in the teachings of the Buddha, there isn't anything described as luck. There's no such thing as luck. Everything that we experience is cause and effect, or action and result. So without necessarily realizing it, I was making decisions all throughout this life, just like you and just like everybody else. We all make decisions, and because of a decision that we make, there's going to be a certain result or a certain consequence. This is what's called karma, or the results of our decisions. So as I was learning throughout life, as we all do, it's always gradual. We're all learning gradually. And that's where loving kindness and compassion can really come into the mind, that no matter where someone is in their journey on the path, when they look back at whatever they've evolved to, they can have loving kindness and compassion for all beings, that everybody's a work in progress. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on yourself to be any particular way today, but instead just stay with consistent, gradual improvement in your life. And that's what's going to ultimately see you through to be able to experience this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. So it's always consequences of decisions, and those decisions are best implemented gradually over time, because then they can be more well thought out. But oftentimes what we tend to do is we want something really quick and really fast, and the mind in the unenlightened state will chase. But if you come to understand what the Buddha is teaching you, which is this gradual progression towards improvement in your mind and in your life, that's the best way to do it.
Right. But for me, as an experience, like say Ramana Maharshi would say, once you've attained the actual peace that passes understanding for a second, there's an element of the ego that will chase it, and there's an element of the truth within that will chase it. You're hooked, in a sense, on every level, and that's certainly what happened to me. Do you feel that I sometimes hear this Theravadan way of describing as, me becoming very peaceful and having no problems. Do you feel that, I'm sure you're aware of the common thing that what unites so many religious traditions is transcendence of ego. Do you think that becoming so comfortable with yourself really is a process of transcendence of ego, or is that, again, something that's gradual?
Yeah, in order to get to enlightenment and getting to the peace and joy, you need to eliminate the ego. The ego needs to be completely eliminated, destroyed, dissolved. With having an ego in the mind, it's going to hinder you from being able to experience that complete peace and joy, because the ego is going to want to put you above other people or below other people, which is just as dangerous. The mind's going to want to have this pecking order. It's going to want to consider yourself as being superior or inferior. You're going to want to judge other people and look down on people and things like this. And when you start communicating through that ego and you start viewing the world through that ego, people are just going to push you aside. They're not going to be interested in associating with that. So in order to get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious and you can relate to all beings in a peaceful and loving way, you've got to get rid of your ego and thinking that you're better than other people, and just consider yourself to be equal to everyone. So the ego does need to be eliminated and completely dissolved in order to be able to get to that peace and joy.
So you're saying that in some ways, I mean, I know the Theravadan practice in the sense of just really confronting the energy that comes up within on a moment-to-moment basis. But do you think this peace for you, the way it's described, is actually coming from ego transcendence, or just simply that processing of that energy?
The Buddha doesn't talk about energy in the way that you're talking about it.
The sensations in the sensations, as in the Satipatthana, etc.
Yeah, the Buddha doesn't talk about this kind of thing. Everything that the Buddha is teaching you is to purify your mind. He discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind. He refers to them as fetters. And when you purify your mind of those 10 fetters, that's what's producing the peace and the joy. As long as you have those pollutions in your mind, you will be burdened by those pollutions and you will experience difficulties and struggles. But when you purify your mind of those, that's where the peace and joy is. So one of the ways to talk about it is we talk about attaining enlightenment, right? You have to attain it. But another way to describe it is that your mind's already enlightened, but you just have these pollutions that are hindering you from experiencing it. And if you remove these pollutions out of the mind, then this natural state of the mind, which is enlightened, can shine through and you can experience that. It's kind of like there's the sun and then there's the clouds in front of the sun, and you peel away the clouds and now the rays of the sun can shine through. So that's more in line with what the Buddha is talking about in getting to this enlightened mental state, is peeling away these clouds, getting rid of these pollutions, so that now the brightness and the radiance of that natural mind can shine through. And that's the enlightened mental state. Mm-hmm. Yep. There's some more questions online too, by the way, if you guys would ever like to get to, you would like to get to those now? Okay. So here in Zoom, let's see, we've got some from Chris. How did you realize Buddhism is what you were looking for in 2018? What circumstances led to that? Okay, Chris, so I'll share this with you guys. And you guys know that when I teach, I always teach in a way that you guys can independently verify what I teach you, right? But this, what I'm about to share with you that happened, you have no way to independently verify this. But ultimately, for the 3 years that I had my company here in Thailand, which was a very unwise decision for me to open that company, because we were doing private investigation work. We were investigating people personally and professionally, and we were reporting this to our clients. And oftentimes it was romantic love affairs and things like this, and we were doing a lot of unwise things as part of that. I actually had several contracts on my head to be able to kill me. I had multiple bodyguards guards that would follow me around and things like this. I was living a very unwise life for 3 years when I first got here to Thailand. But nonetheless, I ended up surviving through that. I got away from all of that. And ultimately, I got to a situation where I was in my room one day, and I felt this sensation coming through my body and moving up through the entire body. And I laid down on my bed, and it was like an explosion happened through my head. And there was all these like warm, fuzzy feelings, like pleasant feelings all throughout the body. And it was an overwhelming sensation that I'd never experienced before. And I knew it was impermanent, and I wasn't interested in dwelling in it. So I tried to get up after about 30 seconds, and I was kind of dizzy. And at this time, I didn't think that God existed. I didn't know anything about this being of God much. Oh, I knew about the being, but I didn't at that time think that this being existed. So I was living a very sheltered life at this point. I had we have 10 security cameras at my house, CCTV cameras. We had our curtains closed, all these other things. And I knew that my mind had kind of had this sudden shift. And I went downstairs and I opened up all the windows. I opened up the doors. I went outside and kind of breathed in all the fresh air, which I hadn't been doing for several months and even years up that point. And I came back into the house with the doors open, and I sat down on the sofa, and a butterfly came into my house, and it flew into my house, and it flew right up into my face sitting on the sofa. And then it turned around and it went outside the door, and it flew outside the house. And I jumped up and went and chased the butterfly to go look to see where this butterfly was. And it had disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And then I went and sat down next to my computer, and there was a screen on my computer that said, don't chase the butterfly, right? It said, don't chase the butterfly. And I was like, whoa, this is strange. And I was interested to go tell my wife about it, and she was upstairs. So I went upstairs, and she was actually getting in the shower, and she had all her clothes off. And I walked into the bedroom or into the bathroom, and I was shocked by her nakedness. And this isn't something I'd ever experienced before. We were having sex, we were doing all the things that a married couple would do, but right away I was like shunned by her nakedness. And I was like, whoa. And she has a big butterfly tattoo on her hip. And I saw that screen that said, do not follow the butterfly, or don't chase the butterfly. And up to that point in time, I used to follow my wife a lot. I used to rely on her for many, 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 many different things. So the message that I was receiving was, stop following your wife. Stop doing everything she wants you to do, and live your own life. Live your life the way that you would like to live it. So this was like a pivotal moment for me, where there was like this shift in the consciousness. And from that point forward, for about a week or two, I felt like I was enlightened. I felt like, everything was so peaceful. Everything was so joyful. All the transgressions that I had in the past, I felt very I had a certain amount of letting go of the guilt and shame that I had experienced because of those things. And I was kind of living this peacefulness in my mind for like a week or two. But then that slowly faded away, and my mind was highly discontent. That you guys, when you experience certain aspects of life, you experience anger and sadness and frustration, but then it goes away and you experience somewhat of peacefulness or calm. But from that point forward, when this feeling of peacefulness had faded away, my mind was highly discontent for multiple months and years. And I had to figure out how to change that. So that was like a pivotal time that allowed me to realize that what I was doing in life was all unwise in the past. And there was this better way of life that I needed to figure out. And it was the teachings of the Buddha that were going to help me to be able to do that. So that's what was like a real pivotal moment for me. Let's see, there's something for Melody here too. Would you mind sharing with us some of the challenges in your two marriages? What makes the difference. So the challenges were, like in my first marriage, I was really interested in having a wife that was talkative and that was interested in having conversations. And my first wife wasn't interested in talking and having conversations. She was a very quiet person. And I kept trying to put this pressure on her and this expectation to be more talkative and more interactive. And it just never worked, right? Because that's not the way to live a peaceful life, is to change other people. You need to change your own mind. So this expectation that I had that my wife would be a certain way, that's not the way she was. And what I realized is that I was trying to eat soup with a fork. I was trying to turn this fork into a spoon. And you can't turn a fork into a spoon, right? This person is not very talkative. She chooses to be more quiet. And I'm not going to get to peacefulness by forcing her to do something that she's not comfortable with, right? So ultimately, I realized this isn't going to work, because I was interested in someone having a partner who was more interactive, more interested in discussions and having interaction and stuff like this. So ultimately I decided to leave. So that was one of the challenges, is that I was trying to force her to be something that she was not. And this led to constant conflict in our marriage, because I was constantly trying to get her to be something that she wasn't. Okay, so that's one of the big things.
Thank you, teacher. Just thinking, turbulent. That rarely do we see people who have such turbulent childhoods go through life without experiencing some really poor mental health. The sort of depressive and anxiety disorders. I wonder if you could comment on that. Was that ever a part of your adulthood as a result of some of that traumatic and past?
Yeah, when I was in college, I had psychosis. If you know what that is, where your mind basically has all kinds of hallucinations and stuff like this. And I was out of my mind. I was in a straitjacket. I was in 5-point restraints at the hospital. They had my ankles tied down to the bed, my arms tied down to the bed. They had a thing across my forehead to keep my body, basically anchored to the bed. And they were injecting me with all kinds of medicines. And they ultimately diagnosed me with what they considered to be bipolar disorder. And I thought that for a period of time that's what was going on. So I took medicines for 24 years, from the age of early 20s until my mid 40s. And then when this experience that I just talked about happened with Chris's question, where I had that explosion out through the head and the butterfly and all this stuff, I realized that I don't need this medication, and I can train my mind, and I can get to a point where I don't need this medication. So as I started training my mind and my mind became stable, that's where I decided to get rid of all the medications. And that was in 2018 that I decided to get rid of all of that. And I've been symptom free of any kind of symptoms that somebody would refer to as bipolar or any of those psychosis or any of that stuff. I used to have to take a whole handful of medicine just to get to sleep at night because my mind was that stressed, right? But then I was able to train my mind and get rid of all of that stuff. So this is why, one of the chapters in this book is about mental health, where a lot of the mental health things that people consider to be biological disorders or brain defects or things like this, you can actually understand that it's actually just an untrained mind. That if people train their mind with the teachings of the Buddha, you can eliminate things like ADHD, ADD, anorexia, bulimia, bipolar disorder, even schizophrenia, and some more challenging things like this. You can actually explain these things through the teachings of the Buddha, and you can train your mind and eliminate those symptoms. But if people don't have the wisdom of how to do that, they will struggle in being able to do that. But because I was able to do that, and I've helped other people to be able to do that as well, I know how to help somebody to be able to do that. So there's certain things that we're experiencing in our medical field and in our human population that people are attributing to be a medical problem or a brain defect or something like this, or a disorder, when in reality it's just a lack of training of the mind. If we train the mind, we can basically get rid of a lot of things that we now are thinking are medical illnesses, and we can actually eradicate that from our human population. These things are not being understood even by modern psychology. They're not understanding them in the way that you can understand them if you learn the teachings of the Buddha and actually train the mind. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are those all the questions from online? And
yeah, let me check YouTube and Facebook. Looks like we have something here on Facebook. Hugo says, "Thanks, David. I'm interested to know about your mental challenges. Can you share your experiences?" So I think that was, he asked that 32 minutes ago. So I think, Hugo, you just kind of got the answer to your question. Yeah.
all right. Well, what we'd like to move on to now is more of your early Buddhism experience. And so I know from studying with you for a couple of years that you transitioned from the States. You decided to sell your Thai massage business, and then you moved here to Thailand. And you had mentioned before that you were teaching some Buddhism classes and theories and whatnot with your Thai massage school and business. But when was it that you actually started to really deeply dive into Buddhism? Was it in the States? And if it was, how did that differ to maybe what you learned or saw about Buddhism when you moved to Thailand?
Sure. So I would say that during my time in the US, I was dabbling in Buddhism, right? Like I was just dabbling. I wasn't reading anything at all. I wasn't watching any videos. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. All I was doing was spending time around Thai people, and I would oftentimes go to the temples, or monks would come to our learning center, but I didn't really pay attention because they were speaking in Thai. And I didn't have enough Thai to understand what they were talking about. I just spent time around them and was just kind of observing the way that they interacted in the world. So I was kind of dabbling in this stuff. So there wasn't really many resources. The resources that were in the USA, they didn't have penetrating information, in my opinion, about what the teachings of the Buddha were. When I got here to Thailand, living in Thai society, you get to experience Buddhism every day, right up in person. It's very tangible. But also being here in Thailand, I got access to some books that were the original words of the Buddha, which didn't exist in the USA. So by getting access to those original teachings is what really helped me. But those original books, the words weren't very accurate. The translations that I was reading weren't very accurate. They were very old English, very difficult to understand. So what I did with this book series is I updated the word choices of these translations so that people could understand the teachings more closely. And that's was really what helped me, is all the wisdom that I had gained through this life and memories that I had from previous lives as well, because there was a period of time where I started to observe my previous lives and stuff. And then seeing those teachings of the Buddha, it was like talking to a best friend. I would be reading his words and I knew what he was going to say before he actually read it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I had learned before. And I had understood those things in a past life. So it was, getting access here in Thailand to his words, or at least a semblance of them, that helped me to be able to put a structure around the book series that I end up sharing now. And by the way, I didn't sell my Thai massage businesses. I did have an offer on them at one point. Somebody offered me $1 million, and I turned it down, and decided to just close them and come here. I was more interested in leaving the business in the hands of the employees. I was going to give it away to them essentially. But there wasn't really anybody that was able to kind of lead the company in the same way. So I just kind of closed them and ended up coming to Thailand.
When you first moved to Thailand, I feel like with many people, when you move somewhere, there's this honeymoon period where everything seems terrific and whatnot. Did you have any time after moving here that you felt differently about Thailand or had some uncomfortable experiences?
Yeah, when I was doing that work that I don't know if I've ever shared with you guys. I did. We had this private investigation company. When I was doing that work for 3 years, that was my first exposure to the dark side of Thailand. Up to that point, I thought everything in Thailand was like mango and sticky rice and, all this, stuff. But there's a real dark side to everywhere, not just Thailand. But everywhere. And Thailand has a real dark side. And that was my first exposure to it. The mafia, contract killing, drugs, gambling. I wasn't necessarily doing those kinds of things, but we were exposed to it because we were investigating these kinds of things. And when I got exposure to that, I was shocked because I had no idea that these things even existed in Thailand. I thought everything in Thailand was peaceful and joyful, but there's a real dark side here. And if you put your foot into that, it's going to bite you. And I got bit very strongly. But I've always seen the Thai people be loving and kind and warm and gentle. Even the people that are into the dark side of Thailand, they tend to do it with a bit of respect and a bit of professionalism that you don't see like in other places. Like usually when you think about the mafia, you think about, kind of harsh, rough edge people that are really aggressive and bitter and hostile. But the Thai mafia is actually quite polite. They're actually quite kind and quite friendly. But, if you're not doing what they would like you to do, they're going to let you know. And they're going to make sure that you understand that, hey, they don't want you to do this. So us investigating unwholesome things in Thailand was stepping into the world of the mafia, and the mafia was like, we don't want you to be doing this. And they made sure that we knew about that. And they did it very politely and very kindly. This dark side of Thailand, I never knew was there, but when I saw it, I wasn't interested in it whatsoever. And because it was either join the mafia and continue to do this business or not. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So that's when I decided to completely go away from it.
Talk about meditation. I've struggled with meditation for years, and I tried it off and on when I lived in California. With mantras and chants and thinking about something else. Tell me about your struggles with meditation.
Yeah, when I was first exposed to meditation, I didn't have a meditation teacher. I was just kind of at my own devices, kind of like when I was growing up as a child, and my parents just let me kind of do whatever I'd like to do with Christianity and everything like that. So same thing with meditation. I didn't really know what I was doing or how to do it, but it was almost like there was a brick wall, and my head was so congested and so thick, and it was so difficult. But I really didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't until I got the words of the Buddha that I saw how he meditated, and I learned how he meditated. And once I started doing what he did, that's what changed everything. And that's where I started noticing the gradual improvement to the condition of the mind. So initially it was very difficult, very hard. It was like hitting a brick wall with my head. But the loving kindness meditation really helped to transform a lot of the anger. I noticed my anger was gradually dissipating. It was helping me in my relationship with my mom and stuff like this. So even though I didn't know what I was doing, I was dabbling with this loving kindness meditation, and that helped me to get rid of a lot of the anger that I was growing up with and a lot of the resentment that I had. So meditation was transformative for me. Without it, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment too. You need other things besides meditation. So you need meditation to get to enlightenment, but it's not the only thing that you would need. So early on, there was just very minimal progress that I saw, but then I got to a point where I was noticing big steps forward. And that was once I got the original teachings of the Buddha. That's where I noticed the large steps forward.
When I meditate, I can go maybe 4 breaths before I have thoughts, invading. it does get better. I mean, now I can go 6, 7, 8 breaths, but it still comes back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you struggle with that also?
Yeah, you're going to have thoughts during meditation because your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Your goal is to notice them sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go whenever they do arise. So, I have a thought in meditation. I'll cut it off and let it go. And then there'll be, a good 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes where there's no thought. The mind's just completely still and quieted and calm and peaceful. But then there's another thought. Before it was like a bombardment of thoughts. It was like thought, or I would have a thought and then I would indulge in it. I'd play with it. I'd look at it. I'd follow it. And then 2 or 3 minutes down the road, I realized oh, you're meditating. Like, get your mind back over here. That's what I used to experience. Where now what I experience is there's a thought. It's one thought. I notice it right away. I cut it off, let it go, and bring the mind back to the breath. And then the mind is still and quiet and peaceful. Even when I'm having the thought, the mind's still peaceful. But there's this long period of time where there's no thought. It's just the mind's focused on the breath. And then there'll be a thought. And then I'll just let that one go. It's very gentle, where before it was very abrupt, very harsh to be able to let go of these thoughts, where now it's just very gentle and the mind can just easily let them go.
Your path to Buddhism seemed like a very gradual one, and at first without much structure. But from what you've said, it sounds like you found some teachings here, which I'm thinking were the Pali Canon, and that you started studying those, and your learning of the path to enlightenment changed dramatically. Did you do a lot of self-study, or did you have any teachers that were there to guide you for that?
Yeah, I didn't have the benefit of having any teachers because there's nobody here in Thailand that can speak in English that would be able to guide you. So that's why one of the reasons why after I understood what I understood, I decided that I was interested in teaching it. And I had the confidence that I could do it because of my previous experience of being a teacher of Thai massage and dabbling in Buddhism. So I knew that I could easily be a teacher. So I started sharing the teachings, and because I didn't have anybody to help me, and I knew that this is something that the world would be able to really benefit from, I decided to start sharing it with other people. What I experienced, I knew other people could experience that same thing.
I think that a lot of people who are studying with you or are interested in studying with you are part of a family unit. So I know that you really started to dedicate yourself to the path of Buddhism after you were already married. Did you have some difficulties explaining that to your wife and to your son, in that you perhaps did not start the family off along that path, but it was something that you came to and decided to follow after you were already in a relationship?
No, my wife, she's Thai, so she's been Buddhist her whole life. She didn't understand the teachings at that time. I started understanding them, and I was then able to help her because she wasn't able to understand. Like she just thought a material object was an attachment. She didn't understand true love. She didn't understand a lot of these teachings that the Buddha had. So I was able to start helping her to be able to understand, but I didn't need to explain it to them like, hey family, by the way, now I'm going to start doing this thing. I didn't have to do that. I just started doing it and gradually implementing the teachings in my own life and then sharing those teachings with them.
Any suggestions for people who are new to Buddhism and do want to follow the path and are in a family unit where they might feel the need to explain why their behavior is different or why they're doing things differently? It seems like things were a little easier for you just because of Sarah's background and where you lived. But for many people, we don't have that same exposure to Buddhism.
Yeah, I would say you don't have to explain anything to anybody. Is you just start learning to be a better and better person and start functioning that way. And other people don't necessarily need to know what you're doing. If they ask you, you're more than willing to share that with them. But you shouldn't feel like you have to come out of the closet kind of thing. You don't have to do that. You can just start practicing the teachings, and people are going to start seeing you becoming more loving and more kind, more friendly and more warm, more gentle. And if they're confused about what they're seeing, they can always ask you questions, and then you just share it with them. Whereas if you go to them and try to pre-tell them what you're going to be doing, it's almost like you're trying to convince them that what you're doing is better or wise, and now maybe they think that you're leaving them behind, so to speak. Instead, just do what you're going to do. It's your life. You don't have to explain your life to anybody at all, and then when they have questions, just answer them.
Have you ever thought of being ordained?
Yeah, actually, there was a period of time in 2018 where I went to a temple. My wife and my son said, yeah, you can ordain. They agreed with me to ordain. I went to this temple. They agreed that they would ordain me. I stayed at the temple to kind of like talk to them a little bit. But what I realized is that there hasn't been anybody that has ever lived in a household life that has taught the path to enlightenment, because the Buddha, he taught it from an ordained life essentially, but there hasn't been anyone necessarily in the household life that has been able to do that. So rather than leave my family and go ordain, I decided to stay in the family, because at that time my wife was unemployed. My son and her were having difficulties in their relationship. He was like 6 years old at the time. And if I went off to the temple and lived at a temple, I'd basically be leaving them in the suffering that they were experiencing, this misery. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go back to the household. I'm going to train my own mind. I'm going to help my family. I'm going to make sure that they are well taken care of and that they understand the teachings too. I'm not going to leave them in this misery. I'm going to help them escape it. So rather than go off to the temple and ordain and all that kind of stuff, I decided to stay in the home to help my family. And I also knew that if I stayed in the home, that then I would be able to help household practitioners, because I live the same life as you guys, right? Like I fly in airports, I go to hotels, I have a wife, I have a son, I have housework that I do all the same things that you guys do. Where living as an ordained practitioner, you're kind of living like a sheltered life. You live in the temple and you're kind of isolated from society. And then when someone comes to you and asks you like, hey, my boyfriend just broke up with me, or my girlfriend just broke up with me, I'm feeling really sad about that, they might not understand how to help you in that situation, where, I've had such a turbulent life, and I had to overcome all of that turbulence, that I know how to do that. And I can explain how to do that. I can explain how to implement these teachings into your daily life. So like just 2 days ago, somebody was asking me questions about Google reviews. They were like, I gave this 1-star Google review and I said all these bad things on the Google review, but I'm not sure if this is practicing the teachings of the Buddha or not. And what would you suggest? And I was able to explain it to them. I was like, here, this is what you can understand about the teachings of the Buddha with Google reviews. And they were like, oh, this is really interesting how you can relate the teachings of the Buddha to something that's so modern, like a Google review, right? So if I lived as an ordained practitioner, I wouldn't have that wisdom to be able to share with people. So I like living in the household life because it allows me to be more relatable for you and help you to understand how to experience this enlightened mental state. And I can also teach ordained practitioners too. Sometimes they will come to me and ask for help. But more likely, I'm going to be teaching household practitioners. They're the ones who usually come to learn with me. Mm-hmm.
So is Buddhism, from your point of view, a philosophy or a religion?
In my opinion, it's neither one. Religion to me is like one person at the top telling everybody else what to do. It's rules and commandments. It's rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and things like this. If that's the way you think about religion, Buddhism's not a religion, because there's not one person at the top. There aren't any rules or commandments. There isn't rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. Even though some places you go to, they have those things. Those aren't what the Buddha actually taught. So we can completely get rid of the religion part of it. I'm not sure what people mean about a philosophy. For me, what the Buddha said when he got to enlightenment is, I've discovered this better way of life. This is how to train your mind. This is how to understand the world around you. So I don't know if people classify that as a philosophy or not, but to me, it's a collection of teachings that help you to understand your mind and understand the world that you live in. And then by understanding these natural laws, you will navigate the world more peacefully. It's this better way of life.
I agree 100% with that. Thailand is, I believe, 85% Buddhist, but it seems that 90% are not practicing what Gautama Buddha has taught. You see the prayer houses, the incense, the food, the water left, at the temple or the shrines at the temples, et cetera, et cetera. So why is that?
Sure. So the statistics that I've heard is that Thailand is 95, 96% consider themselves Buddhist. And I agree with you. A large majority of them aren't practicing it in the way that the Buddha taught. The reason why is because when Buddhism came here 800 to 1200 years ago, they were already practicing animism, which we could consider like a folk traditions, where they believe that inanimate objects have a spirit. So this is why, like when you go out on a boat, they will make offerings to the water, right? Or if you go into the mountains, they will make offerings to the trees, right? And they make offerings to the earth, right? This is animism, that inanimate objects have a spirit, and now we need to worship that spirit. We need to appease that spirit, and now this spirit will help us to have a better life, right? This is like a folk tradition. They were doing that 800 to 1200 years ago, and prior to that they were doing that. So when Buddhism came in 800 to 1200 years ago, they didn't just like wipe clean everything that they had been doing for all those generations and bring in this clean strain of Buddhism. Even when Buddhism came here 800 to 1200 years ago, it was already tainted at that point because it had Hinduism and other things mixed into it. So it wasn't like on Friday they made an announcement that on Monday we're going to be up and running on Buddhism 2.0, like delete all your old files and now adopt this Buddhism. They just merged everything together. So you got like a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of animism, a little bit of Christianity now in the things that the people do. And it's all kind of mixed and blended together. And if you grow up in a remote village in Thailand, and you have a temple in your village, and grandma and grandpa, your aunts and uncles and mom and dad go to this temple, and you just kind of do these things on a regular basis, you grow up thinking that that's Buddhism, all these mixed matched things, where someone from the outside looking in, you can see very clearly, this is Buddhism, this is Hinduism, this is animism, this is Christianity, things like that. They can't see that as clearly because they grew up with it all just mixed together, and that's the way they see it. So the reason why this is occurring is because they don't study with the original words of the Buddha. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one that studied with the original teachings of the Buddha. So that's less than 1% of the temples. This is why you see all these temples are pretty much empty, because they're not teaching. They're not, the ordained practitioners aren't, in some cases, actively learning the teachings with the original words of the Buddha. They're not actively on the path to enlightenment. They're not training their own mind. So therefore, they don't have the wisdom to share with other people. And now people aren't learning the original words. They're just doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, things that the Buddha didn't actually teach. They're thinking in good luck and bad luck terms. They're thinking in rituals and prayer and worship and things like this. And they think that that's what's going to create a better life for themselves. But the interesting thing about Thailand is that enough of the teachings have been blended into the culture that it just becomes kind of part of the culture, and they're actually learning it, right? So like when I grew up, if I was bitter and harsh and hostile with mom or dad, I'd probably get slapped across the face, right? Where here in Thailand, if you're bitter and harsh and hostile with mom or grandma or grandpa, someone's going to sit you down and say, hey, we don't talk to grandma that way. We're gentle and we're kind and we're loving, and we would like you to be more gentle with grandma, right? So they have adopted the teachings of the Buddha without even necessarily realizing it, integrating it into their culture. So they have a certain proficiency of the teachings just because of way of learning it in their homes, but they don't have a wide variety of deep understanding of the teachings if they haven't studied with the original words of the Buddha. So that's why we see it, because they've just kind of blended and mixed everything, and they're not studying with the original words of the Buddha. But there are some communities that are doing that. In those places that are doing that, they're really flourishing here in Thailand. But it's just very few and far between. But fortunately, there's enough people that the teachings have been integrated into the culture that they're practicing them, at least without even necessarily realizing it. So they might not be able to explain to you what are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, but they're practicing it. They won't be able to explain to you the 4 noble truths, but they're practicing it, because it's just been integrated into what they've learned and adopted growing up. They just haven't learned it formally.
Before we move into maybe your transition as a teacher, we just wanted to see if anybody had any questions either here or online.
Looks like we have some online here. So Tom is asking, here's one. Here's one from Chris. Did you try to find teachers on the path to enlightenment even though it was not successful? No, I never tried to find any teachers because I knew there wasn't anybody that could help me. Tom says, so the books available in Thailand which you read have Pali English translations sections. The books that I share are all English. There's no Pali in them whatsoever, because learning in a native language that you already understand, you're going to actually be able to get the most benefit out of that. So everything that I share is in the English language, and they're all in English, and they're available on our website, and they're available on Amazon as well. Melody says, I wonder how you view other interpretations of the world, science, religions, philosophy. Do you see other possibilities except Buddhism? If so, how do they fit into each other? In terms of getting to enlightenment, I don't see any other teachings out there that are going to guide you to this enlightened mental state that the Buddha taught. Whether these other things like science and other things are beneficial for our life, surely these things contribute something to humanity. But in terms of getting to enlightenment and how to experience that enlightened mental state, in my opinion, it's only the teachings of the Buddha that would guide you to that. If these other teachings like Hinduism and Christianity and things like that can get you to that point, I don't understand that and how to do it through those teachings, because I don't see how those teachings lead you to that. But the teachings of the Buddha surely will. And these other disciplines and topics out there that people study, they surely contribute to people's life, but it's just not something that the Buddha taught, and it's not part of his path to enlightenment. So what I focus on is sharing the Buddha's original path to enlightenment. So sometimes people ask me about like yoga and Reiki and all these different things, like I think someone did in this class about Qigong and things like this, martial arts, Kung Fu, karate. Sure, those things are all, part of our society and something that people choose to do. But in terms of your path to enlightenment, in terms of training your mind, whether you use those things or not is up to you. But in terms of the core teachings that lead to enlightenment, those aren't part of that. But it doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to do them, because obviously there's some benefit in doing yoga or martial arts or qigong or things like this. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist in the world. So if somebody chooses to do those things, that's up to them. But what I specialize in is helping people understand the teachings of the Buddha. And then let's see, Tom just says, wonderful explanation. He also says, I meant when you were just learning, since you had no teachers in one of the temples you visited. I've talked to ordained practitioners, but they don't have the ability to communicate the teachings in English in a deep enough level that is going to guide someone to enlightenment. I haven't talked with any ordained practitioner that has that ability. They can speak in Thai, but I don't speak Thai to that level to be able to understand the path to enlightenment through the Thai language. But, obviously there's plenty of ordained practitioners that are servicing the local Thai community here, but I just haven't met anybody that has a proficiency enough with English and understands the teachings deeply enough to be able to explain how to get to enlightenment. So I never went and looked for a teacher because I know that they don't exist. And I just relied on my own understanding to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha and train the mind to experience what I'm now experiencing. And let's see. I don't see any other questions, guys.
Thank you, David. Just on the book series itself, I mean, it's a huge volume of work you've put together. When did you do that? And particularly writing the first volume, I mean, when did you do that, and how'd you go about it?
Yeah, it took me multiple years to put this book series together. I started in 2018 after I had that experience that I told you guys about with the head and the butterfly. I started writing. I didn't know it was going to be a book, and I didn't know it was going to be a book series. I just started writing, and I started writing about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and all these kinds of things without having even studied the teachings of the Buddha at that point, because I already understood it from previous lives. So I started writing about them, and then I just kept adding chapter after chapter after chapter, and I got to this first book, and it was actually a version before this, and I used that first book for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I was teaching here from 2018 to about 2020, and I was teaching in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, and I was using that first book, and I was trying to assess what was working and what wasn't working, because I understood the teachings, but understanding them for yourself and communicating them to others is two different things. So this first book that I was using, that I had written, I was using certain vocabulary, certain language, and I was seeing what was working and what wasn't working. And after about a year and a half, 2 years, I kind of understood what book on that one as well. I then started with the other ones, and this was during the COVID time, 2020. So I was working probably a good 12 to 16 hours a day, again, like I was doing in my own business, but I was doing it writing these books. And I didn't really have very many students at that time, but I knew someday there would be students. And I knew that there was massive numbers of people in the world that were interested in this topic. And it was kind of like I felt like I had discovered the cure to cancer, and I was trying to figure out how to get it into anybody's hands that could use this, right? So it was just a matter of trying to figure out, because at that point I had been isolated for like 3 years doing that private investigation company. I was really isolated. So it was kind of like entering back into the world, and I started understanding what is a podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I started understanding about Facebook again, because I'd been away from Facebook for 3 years. I started understanding how to use Facebook and all these different tools that people were now involved with. I started trying to figure out how to get this wisdom into people's hands. And I didn't know that there was going to be a Steve someday. I didn't know that it would be Steve, but I knew there was someone out there that was going to need this information. Take a picture of each page of the book, one page by one page. I did that for 5 months, just taking pictures of 13 books. And then I did like optical character recognition and took the photo and turned it into text. And then I took it from there and I put it into the book series. It took me about 3 years to get to the first book in its kind of final form, but it took me 1 year to write 12 books, because at that point I understood exactly what I needed to be doing in order to get these books written. So it took me about 1 year to get the previous books, or the subsequent books, available. Sorry, Zoom just crashed. It's kind of reopening. Yeah, so it was an enormous amount of work and effort, and I was just doing it because I knew that the world needed these teachings, and I was the individual that could bring it to them. Yeah.
Working? Oh, there it is. Hi. I wanted to ask a question about like kind of the pressure to optimize. I feel like in Western culture and in other parts of the world, perhaps there's this desire to like perfect things. And it's like a tension that I have with myself and other people in my life. So, I mean, you made like a really powerful distinction between belief and practice kind of assumes that there's no like. So I guess my question is like, do your students ever express concerns about that desire to be perfect, and kind of how they go about alleviating those and releasing them from the mind?
Yeah, that's the underlying thing that the Buddha is teaching you. Is it's called craving, desire, attachment. He's teaching you how to eliminate this from the mind, because that's what's causing the discontent feelings. Now, when the mind wants and expects something to be a certain way, if it's that way, you get happy, and if it's not that way, you get sad or frustrated or angry or what have you. So his core central teaching of the Eightfold Path, that's the way to eliminate this longing, yearning, this craving. So that's what you learn up front. So that's why, like, after our restart, our official restart next week, then I will immediately go into the Eightfold Path. The first 3 sessions after that, where I'll go deeply into the Eightfold Path and explaining it in detail, because that's what's going to teach a student how to train their mind to eliminate all this longing, yearning, and craving and chasing after the objects of your affection. So it takes me about 2.5 hours to explain that. But it's been recorded many times, or you can attend when we have classes either here or online. And that's what you actually need to be able to get rid of that almost obsession that the mind has to be perfect. And it's going to take some training to be able to get the mind to be able to do that. Yeah. I think we have more coming in here too. You guys good? Okay. So usually we end class at 10:30. It's now 11:30. So I know that some of you guys might need to leave. So feel free to do whatever you would like to do. Let's see. Melody says, do you see enlightenment the ultimate goal of life? Yes, absolutely. Without an enlightened mind, you'll struggle and have difficulties your entire life. By getting to enlightenment, your mind will be performing optimally. You'll be completely peaceful and joyful. That's like ultimately the best thing that could ever occur for you, is to actually get to enlightenment. But oftentimes people don't know what that enlightened mental state is. They don't know how to get to it. They don't even know that it exists. So they just continue to struggle, being angry and frustrated and agitated, and blaming other people for the things that they experience in life. Where what the Buddha teaches you to do is take responsibility for the things that you're experiencing in life. And by doing so, you can cultivate wisdom and transform your mind and your life. And without that basic understanding, you'll just continue to struggle in your day-to-day life. So if somebody's interested in experiencing a wonderful life, enlightenment would be wise to be your goal. If someone's happy with the difficulties and struggles and the misery and the anger and the frustration and the sadness and the stress, the anxiety and all these things, then enlightenment is not for them. But I would suggest that people don't like those things, that it feels horrible to experience that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure all of us have experienced breakups, with like a boyfriend or girlfriend or something like this. We call it heartache, but in reality, what it is it's painful feelings in your mind is what it is. And that's no fun experiencing those kinds of things over and over and over again. So you can get to the point where you've healed from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what enlightenment is that you never need to hurt ever again. And that's the best thing that could ever happen in one's life. Chris says, how has there been resistance from students and other teachers about the idea that God is a real being? Can you explain your experiences about this? Yes. Like one of the big misunderstandings about the teachings of the Buddha is people think that the Buddha didn't teach about God. So as soon as I started teaching about God, because it's in the original teachings of the Buddha, people were attacking me right away, even ordained practitioners. They were sending me messages and telling me how horrible I was of a person to be sharing teachings about God when he thought that the Buddha did not teach this. If you go back to the original teachings of the Buddha, you can see that he taught about God. He just didn't make God as a central figure in his teachings, because it's not God that determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. So he didn't put God at the center of his teachings. He put you at the center of his teachings, because it's you that's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment or not. So there's been plenty of resistance, but my goal isn't to convince anybody of anything whatsoever. I'm teaching a path to enlightenment, and if people are interested in that path, I share it with them. If they have a sincere interest to learn and grow and develop, I will share it with them. Where somebody's bitter and harsh and hostile, they're aggressive and trying to denigrate what I do, I just ignore it and I just keep walking forward, and I just help the people that are interested in that help. So I can teach people how to get to enlightenment with a relationship with God, but I can also teach people how to get to enlightenment without a relationship with God. You getting to enlightenment is not dependent on whether you have a relationship with God or not. So I can service all individuals in that way because it's not dependent on whether you get to enlightenment or not to have a relationship with God. But there's some people out there that want me to teach Buddhism the same way that they teach Buddhism, because it makes them feel better when other people are teaching things the same way as them. But that's the whole underlying problem that people are having, is they're having craving, wants, and expectations and trying to force other people to do things their way, where I'm not out here trying to force anybody to do anything whatsoever. I teach the teachings of the Buddha based on the original words of the Buddha. And if other people choose not to do that, then that's their choice. But when people start trying to force me or convince me to teach in the same way that they teach, I'm disinterested in that, and I just don't pay attention to it. And I just teach what I know that leads to enlightenment based on the original words of the Buddha. And if somebody hates me and is angry and frustrated with me for teaching the elimination of discontentedness and teaching it in the way that the Buddha taught it, my mind's unaffected by that. But if somebody appreciates, honors, and respects me for sharing the teachings of the Buddha in the way that the Buddha taught it, my mind is unaffected by that too. Right? I don't get all excited and happy just because somebody understands what I'm teaching. Because if someone does honor, appreciate, and respect me for what I'm doing to share the teachings of the Buddha, that's because they understand the teachings that I'm sharing. That person who hates me or angry or bitter or hostile about me sharing the teachings of the Buddha, that's because they don't understand the teachings of the Buddha. That's why they have that anger, hatred, and ill will in their mind. So I'm unaffected by both of these scenarios. And if you understand the path to enlightenment, if you understand the world, you will never live in a world where everybody loves you. You will never live in that world. It just doesn't exist. There's going to be some people who love you and adore you and think you're the best person that they've ever met. And there's other people that are going to hate you and be vindictive and think you're the worst person they ever met. And in that situation, you just choose not to spend time with that person, right? You would like people to love you unconditionally, that they're not putting their expectations on you and trying to force you or control you to be a certain way. So me as a teacher, I don't have any expectations of the students. I don't try to control them or force them to do anything specific. I'm just here sharing the path to enlightenment as the Buddha taught it. And if people appreciate that, wonderful, I share it with them. If people hate me for that, okay, that's their opinion, and I'm unaffected by it. But should that person ever change their mind and they're interested in learning what the Buddha has to share about how to get to enlightenment, then I stand ready to be able to help those people with unconditional love. Even though they hate me, even though they're angry at me, even though they might be gossiping and slandering and having rumors that they're spreading about me, if at any point they decide to change their mind and they decide that they would like to learn these teachings, then I'm ready to be able to help that person to do that. Melanie says, thank you. Would there be other destinations of life that you haven't explored? I don't know of any other destination in life. I'm sure there might be something out there, but in terms of enlightenment, I've never seen anything like it. I've never heard of anything like it. I don't think there's anything better than the enlightened mental state that would exist in the world. I've lived this life up to 50 years now. I don't know of anything else in the world that comes remotely close to this enlightened mental state. And if every individual understood how peaceful and joyful the mind is in that enlightened mental state, there's nothing that would stand in their way to be able to accomplish that.
Just wanted to ask you, when you decided to be a teacher, how did you come to the understanding that you were ready for that and capable to teach?
Yeah, I knew right away that I was able to teach because I'd done it with Thai massage. And even before Thai massage, even when I was in college working in the computer lab, I was teaching computers at the age of 19, I was teaching computers. I'd never taught before. Nobody ever taught me to be a teacher. I just figured it out. I was developing curriculum all the way back at 19 years old. I was developing curriculum for the computer lab of how to teach computers. When I taught Thai massage, I had to develop my own curriculum and teach it. Nobody taught me how to be a teacher. So when it was time to develop a curriculum for learning Thai massage or Buddhism and be a teacher, I'd already done it in computers and in Thai massage. It was just a matter of taking those same lessons that I learned and applying it here. So I was very confident that I could do it. And while I had a very turbulent life, I've never not accomplished something that I was interested in accomplishing. If I was interested in accomplishing something, I would figure out a way to do it, and I would be successful at it. So I knew that I could be successful at helping people. That was my goal, is to help people learn this mental state. And I knew that I could figure it out. It was just a matter of time. So I just kept applying my effort and energy, my determination towards helping people. And I figured out how to help people. And that's when I developed, all this curriculum slowly but surely, starting with the books, then the classes and courses and programs and retreats and all those other things that I've added. I've just slowly added things piece by piece, always with the interest of just helping people to be able to learn and grow and develop. Because in the past, I already made lots of money with computers and Thai massage and all of that. So I knew money doesn't lead to happiness. So it wasn't my interest to make money. In fact, for the first, I would say, year and a half or 2 years, I didn't even accept donations. Students would offer me money and I would say, no, I don't accept donations. And I would direct them to give it to somebody else. I would say, oh, you can give that to somebody else. But then I realized that if I kept going down that path, I wouldn't have the basic necessities that I need in order to sustain life, because I depleted my resources because I had a certain amount of money and I exhausted it. And I didn't really know where I was going to get any more money to eat. I had gotten that far. It was almost like the Buddha starving himself, right? I got to that point and I was like, whoa, I'm not practicing the middle way here. I'm going to need to take in some kind of money in order to be able to sustain my life. So students started offering to give me donations. So I started to accept donations, but that was never my interest because I'd already had money and I knew that didn't lead to happiness. So for 2 years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, I just did everything on my own without even interest in even collecting a donation from anybody. I was actually doing some other work. I was doing personal training, teaching people how to exercise, even though it probably doesn't look like it, but at one time I was able to do that. And I was doing that for a year and a half on the side, just to have a little bit of money coming in while I was able to write all these books and build all this curriculum and all this kind of stuff.
Leads to my next question is, you kind of led into it, that being a teacher is your job. You have nothing else that you do. I feel like just from what we learn in class and whatnot, that you're like a 24/7 lifeline or helpline, if you will. So because of that, you obviously do not have a salary. So how can we as students and as your community support you in continuing to share the teachings?
Yeah, so while people might consider what I do to be my job, I don't consider it that way. It's just something I really enjoy doing, and I do it, and I don't have any expectation from anybody for anything. I can help anybody and everybody. I never change the way I help somebody based on whether they donate to what I'm doing or contribute to what I'm doing or not. I help everybody equally. But yeah, even though I offer these teachings at no cost and I don't have any expectation, there is a cost to offer these teachings. So like we're using air conditioning right now, that's electric, right? The computers and the technology that I use, this microphone that I'm speaking on, all this stuff costs money to be able to share these teachings. So students will sometimes set up regular donations where they're regularly donating to me, or they might donate their time or their effort. Like some people come here and clean. They sweep the floor and take out the trash and clean the bathrooms. This isn't necessarily for me, right? Because if I wasn't doing this, if I went out and started a business, I could be wildly successful in that business, but I'm just not interested in that. I'm interested in doing this. So this isn't for me, even though someone might be giving me food or giving me money to buy food. Yes, it's to keep this being alive, but the way that I see it is it's really for all of you, that you guys get to have these teachings available to you. So when someone comes here and cleans the temple and takes out the trash and cleans the bathroom, it's not really for me. It's for all of us. It's for the community. So anything that's given to this community is for this community. And a small portion of that goes to help me to buy food and water and clothing and shelter and medical care and all these different things that I need to sustain my life. But then a certain amount of it goes towards toilet paper and paper towels and shampoo or soap and all these different things that we need to run and operate the facility, or buy a microphone or speakers or what have you. So the best thing that students can do is to learn and practice the teachings. That's the best thing that they could do. As they learn how to do that and they start experiencing the benefits of having done so, if they would like to contribute to share their time, effort, energy, or resources, like helping at the temple or contributing financial support to allow us to do what we do, that stuff helps. But just understand that my help isn't contingent on that. And I don't have expectations of people to do that. I'm here to help people regardless.
People did want to help you financially, because a lot of people aren't here in Chiang Mai to perhaps put something in the donation box or to help around the temple. What are the ways that they can do that?
On our website, we have a webpage that says support us, and they could use PayPal to submit a donation or a recurring donation where it's like a monthly thing. I also use Wise, which is an international money transfer. I use Venmo. I use Zelle. I have a U.S. bank account. I have a bank account in the UK, and all these. The Wise sets you up with a bank account in pretty much all these different countries, and people can send funds that way, and it comes into me. So from our website, there's a page that says support us, and it has all the different options there.
When was the last time you experienced discontentedness?
So they asked me this question in a retreat that I was teaching in 2022. When's the last time I got angry or frustrated? And I didn't know the answer because it had been so long. I didn't remember. So I suggested to them that they ask my son, they asked me, they said, what would your son say? If you don't remember, what would your son say? And I said, well, I don't know. And he happened to be with me, and he walked into the room, and I said, there he is right there. You can ask him. And they said, when's the last time you saw your dad angry? And basically what he said was 2017. So that's the last time that I remember, based on his recollection, was in 2017 that he remembers me being angry at that time and frustrated. So that's the last time I experienced those feelings. Thank goodness.
Well, to stay on that same personal angle, I guess, I just wondered during your path, and this might be new to people that haven't started studying with you yet, but the 10 fetters and attachment and discontentedness that we know is the root of our unhappiness. What did you find were the more difficult attachments to give up or to conquer?
The most challenging one for me was sexual contact. Eliminating that was very challenging. There was a point in my life where I was having lots and lots and lots of sex. I was addicted to sex, you could say. And eliminating that was very challenging. But you need to, in order to get to the permanent peace and permanent joy. If there was a way to still have sex and get to permanent peace and joy, get to enlightenment, I would have figured that out, and I'd be happy to report that to you. If you're young and you're interested in getting on the path to enlightenment, don't think you have to eliminate sex today, because you might be interested in a family, or you might be in a sexual relationship, and you guys are having a great time. Okay. Have fun. But at some point, you guys will get to a point where it's just like, been there, done that. How many times can we do it that way? seen it enough, and you'll probably be ready to move on. And just understand that you can actually get to the second stage of enlightenment and still be having sex, and your life will be quite peaceful. But then at some point, you're going to start seeing more and more peace, and you're going to say, wow, I'm having this like 1 hour or 2 hour of pleasure. And that pleasure lasts sometimes for a couple of days after sex, but ultimately you end up back into the disgruntled feelings because you were so excited and happy during the sex. Then when the sex isn't there anymore, you'll kind of be agitated and frustrated because you can't have sex. So you start realizing like, wow, I'm giving up these weeks and weeks and months of peacefulness for this little bit of pleasure over here with the sex. And you'll ultimately decide that, hey, I would like to let that go. But at the time, I thought I was losing something, but what I came to realize is I was actually gaining something by giving up the sex. I was gaining the peace and the joy that the mind can experience by not having a craving for sex. Because as long as you have a craving for sex, you'll feel great when you're having sex, but when you're not, you'll be agitated and frustrated when you can't have sex. So I didn't actually give anything up. I actually gained something, which is the peace and the joy. So that was the most challenging one for me. And it took many years to train the mind to eliminate that because there was just so much craving for sex in the mind.
Students study with you, I would imagine, for many years. As you've said, this is a very gradual process. At what point do you think a student could feel confident enough to maybe kind of go it on their own for a bit? Or would they need to come and touch back with a teacher such as yourself on a regular basis, or just as needed when they're struggling with something? Like when would we know that we would maybe be okay to work on things on our own?
Yeah, every student's going to be different. There's kind of not a standard recipe, but if someone's taken all the classes, they've learned in all the courses and retreats and things like this, you guys probably get to a point where you almost know what I'm going to say before I say it, because you hear the same words over and over and over again, right? And if you're at that point, you're like, whoa, like, I know what he's going to say before he even says it. You've read the books, you've been in the classes, you've had the personal guidance, you've got a well-developed meditations practice, you're noticing more and more peacefulness, you're not getting discontent very frequently, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, you're experiencing a little bit of discontentedness. You know that, you don't need to necessarily come to the classes. You can just kind of continue to implement these teachings in your day-to-day life, and then whenever you're having trouble or challenges, you can come ask for help, and just know that I'm always here to help you.
It sounds like discontentedness is a good way to know that you're making progress, or the length of time between your episodes of discontentedness. Mm-hmm. How can people get guidance from you if they're needing help? So I know that coming to the temple is one way, but not everyone's in the proximity of Chiang Mai to get your help that way.
Yeah, there's 4 ways to get help. One is to ask questions in a live class, either here or online. You can post in our Facebook group, because we have a Facebook group that you can post into, and I'm the only one who answers it. You can send me a private message like email, WhatsApp, Line, Facebook Messenger, all those different things. Or you can schedule personal guidance where we sit down and talk, just you and I. And we can do that in person, or we can do it on Zoom, because there's a website that you can log into and schedule an appointment, and then we can meet in Zoom. So those are the 4 ways that I share the teachings: is live classes, posting in Facebook group, sending private messages, in scheduling personal guidance. And to confirm for you, yes, the discontentedness that you experience, that's the best way to see if you're making progress on the path. Oftentimes what people do is they try to judge their meditation. If they have a really peaceful meditation, they're like, oh, I'm doing well. Or if my mind's all convoluted and muddled in meditation, then I'm not doing well. That's not a good way to determine your progress on the path. The best way to determine your progress is how frequently do you become discontent. If you're becoming discontent once every month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, you know that you're making significant progress, because typically you're going to become discontent, once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, 10 times a week. You're getting annoyed or frustrated or lonely or bored. Whereas when that starts to spread out and you get more and more peacefulness in your day-to-day life, and your interactions with other people are very harmonious, this is where you know you're making progress, because you don't have the bitterness and harshness in your relationships any longer. So that's what you should look for progress, is what is the state of your mind and how peaceful is it, and what's the longevity of that peacefulness. And if you're noticing that you're getting multiple weeks and months of peacefulness where you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not agitated or lonely or bored or any of those things, that's where you'll know that your mind's making significant progress.
We're coming to an end of the questions that we had prepared for you. I did just want to, for people who are new to your teachings, if you could just give a quick summary of the way that you do teach people, as far as retreats or online or in the temple, polycanon, that type of thing.
Yeah, so there's 2 ongoing programs. One is the group learning program, which meets each Sunday and Wednesday, which we go through this first book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Every Sunday I go chapter by chapter. And then on Wednesdays, we do meditation together, and I teach meditation. We do meditation on Sundays too, but on Wednesdays, I actually teach it to you on Wednesdays. That's a good place to start, where you're just kind of trickling the teachings in little by little. Then the first full week of every month, I teach a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And that's a 5-day course where you get all the foundational teachings. And that's taught 12 times throughout the year, minimum. And then when I travel to other places, I also teach it there too. Then 4 times a year, I teach Harmony in Relationships course, where this is teaching you how to build harmony within your relationships. Then 2 times a year, I teach Experiencing the Jhanas in the 4 stages of enlightenment. Then once a year, I teach a retreat that is everything you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And then once a year, I teach everything you need to do to get from the first stage of enlightenment to enlightenment itself. So it's kind of like a pyramid, right? It kind of all feeds into each other. And then there's the Polycanon and English Study Group, which explores volumes 2 through 13. And that's a 1.5-year program, and it meets each Saturday. So all of these programs are designed to fully soak you and steep you in the teachings of the Buddha, where you have the opportunity to be involved live or watch the recordings, either on YouTube, Facebook, or on our podcast. You can listen to the recordings. So you are on your own journey. The way that I teach is I'm like a tour guide. You are an independent practitioner. You're not a devotee. You're not a follower. You're not a believer. You're none of those things. You are an independent practitioner looking for the truth, seeking wisdom. Your teacher is essentially a tour guide, and I'm pointing out for you the things that you need to learn. And I've created this curriculum that allows you to gradually learn, and I make it available to you at no cost. But it's up to you to choose to do the work. I don't hold your hand and walk you through it. But when you come ask for help, I'm right here willing to help you day in and night. Day and night, I'm ready and willing to help you. Even when I leave here, I'm going to leave here. I'm going to go get something to eat, and then I'm going to go home and spend some time with my son. And when I'm spending time with my son sitting on the sofa, I'll be writing students, because students will have messages and posts and things that they're asking me, and I'll be sitting there spending time with my son, helping students with questions that they have. So day in and night, I am constantly helping students from the time that I wake up until the time that I go to bed. I'm helping people nonstop with the teachings of the Buddha. I have these formal classes and books and retreats and personal guidance and all these other things, but that's what I'm making available for you. But you've got to decide in your own personal journey what fits in with your lifestyle, and how do you get plugged into all these different opportunities, because you're going to need to kind of pick and choose slowly but surely what is fitting in. And typically this group learning program is a common one for people to start with, because it's usually about 1.5 hours each Sunday, right? Today we're going quite a bit over that, but usually it's about 1.5 hours each Sunday, where 30 minutes of it is meditation and 1 hour of it is me teaching. And then, you just kind of trickle it in that way. And that's usually a really great way to learn.
On behalf of Pat and myself, acting as hostess, I just wanted to thank you for being so open with your answers. And I think that us learning about your life and the difficulties you've had makes us realize you're no different. Sometimes I think we can put teachers and other people on a pedestal, which we learn we should not. But I think that it makes you more relatable to us and that you understand what we're going through. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
And just wanted to see if anyone else had any questions or if we have any online.
Sure, I'll take a look. But one of the things I'll share in that regard is one of the reasons why this book is so thick is because I did all these things, right? When it talks about drugs and alcohol and, difficult relationships and all that stuff, that's why the book's so thick, is because, I experienced all those things. So that's why I'm able to write about it. And that's why I'm able to help you, is because I had to overcome all that kind of stuff. I oftentimes joke people, I say there's the only things in this book that I have not done is I haven't killed another human being. I haven't raped anybody, right? I haven't ever had sex with a child, because it talks about that in here. Like I've never done that kind of stuff. Never had sex with someone of the same gender, although other people that do, there's no harm in that. It's just something that I've never done. And I think that's about it. Everything else that I've done, like drugs and alcohol and stealing and sexual misconduct. I definitely went out and cheated on people and was unfaithful and unloyal to them. And I experienced all the consequences of these things. And that was why I had such a difficult life, because I didn't have the wisdom of how to live this better way of life. So I had a really difficult and challenging life. But it's when I learned these teachings and I practiced them that life became so peaceful and so joyful. And that's why I'm interested in helping other people experience it. Because of the trials and tribulations that I experienced, there's a better way of life. And when you learn that, life becomes so peaceful and so enjoyable. So perhaps you can relate to these things and understand when you're reading this, David's speaking from experience because he's done all these things. I don't see any other questions online. Let me just check Facebook and YouTube. I don't see any other questions. I see lots of people online though, so it's nice to see all of you guys. Thank you for joining in. And this was, our unofficial restart of the group learning program. Thank you to Pat and Samantha for offering to be kind of like our host for today. Thank you for all of you guys for your questions and your interest to learn. Thank you for everybody online as well. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. Starting next week, I'm going to introduce the program to students by teaching you about the teachings of the Buddha next week. So on Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm going to be teaching 9 a.m. here, and then 9 p.m. I teach from home and I live stream it. So no matter where you are, you can learn. I'm going to help you really get started with the official restart of the group learning program. And I'll do that on the 1st of June at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thai time. This Wednesday, I'm going to have a class here where I'm just going to guide you in meditation. And then any questions you guys have about the teachings of the Buddha, you guys can ask those as well. So I'm going to do that on Wednesday. So thank you again. Whatever you guys decide to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. And perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.